Hey, g'day, everybody. Just had to reboot the system. Still waiting for the guests to come in. This is. Hey, we're live, hey, and things happen sometimes, and I don't know if it's the internet, if there's a solar flare or whatever that's causing the issues. And we got Mr. Earl Grey with us here. Where are you, Earl? Got to be there. And not showing up. Where are you, Earl? There you are.
Yep. Hello. No echo.
No echo. That's good. Oh, yeah.
That is good. That was irritating. I mean, I like Pink Floyd as much as the next guy, but not when I'm trying to have a conversation, you know.
Is there anybody out there?
Well, there's Robert.
Yeah, Rob's here.
Oh, no, Bob.
Come on.
Robert
Come on,
brought the
James.
echoes with him.
How could I possibly have done that?
You're the echo guy. I think you need to turn off your speakers and go to earphones, maybe.
I have never, ever.
He's not echoing with me.
And
because we've got a loop going here.
Yeah, I hear my echo. I really do.
I'll try that and see if it.
And then I'm going to sing Pink Floyd for you.
Where's James? Is there anybody out there?
After all, we're only ordinary men.
Hey, you realize there's three musos here? Oh, here he is. He's back. Okay. Does
Robert,
that make any
check 1, 2. Can you hear me?
Oh, better. No echo.
Robert, say something.
Thank you, Robert.
Something in your eyes.
In the way
I still don't have Robert.
Oh, God.
Now we're happening. Okay.
That's unbelievable.
Well, Jim is on his way.
I'm
He's
here.
having trouble connecting, but he's in Arizona.
I don't know what the problem is.
Can you see me?
Yes, see you fine.
We're all here. No echo. We're rocking.
Hear you fine.
That's good.
But I don't have Robert.
Robert?
You can't hear Robert.
What have you done?
I cannot. The only thing that happened today that was new on my end is I took advantage of the holiday savings on StreamYard.
Oh, damn.
And loaded up my own account, but I've tested it like 3 times, and you guys all hear me and see me. So
well, this is frustrating.
Okay. I think we're.
Yeah, I hear.
But
hear.
Jim can't hear. Jim, you can't hear Robert. Huh?
I can hear Terry. I can hear you, but I can't hear the professor.
Wow.
Weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must be frustrating,
sure
Robert.
What's going on?
Somebody can't hear.
Well,
Mr. Golden Tonsils has been shut off.
I rarely run into complaints other than please stop.
It doesn't do.
It sounds really good right now. If you could hold up little signage.
Well, Leslie Hawkins turned around and said he can hear us all, so that's fine. I hear us all, and you know. Where'd it go?
Yeah, it sounds good.
I went and erased all the history on my Chrome account, so that there's nothing. There shouldn't be anything in there blocking it. I can hear you two fine. I just can't hear Robert.
Do us a favor, James. Can you hold up your new book? I want you to show it to the world. Now, Mr. Jim Gill has a new book coming out.
Book.
Yes.
You want me to put my book? Show my book? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. 2 of you were talking at the same time, and I can't hear anything when 2 people are talking.
Yes, please show your book, Deb.
Okay.
Please show your book. Thank you. Oh, this is frustrating there, Professor. I mean, everybody else picks you up. I don't know why. What is it?
It's got to be something on Jim's end, because I've got a 5x5 on the chat on my channel.
Maybe I should ask Freaky.
You guys can hear me okay?
Robert,
I hear you fine. Yeah, hold it. Here we go.
It is.
Oh. It's not in view.
Pull back a little ways.
I hate technology. God damn it. Just a second.
Are you using a different camera there at all there, James?
Background, none. Okay.
Jim, are you using a different microphone or different computer?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No. That's my newest book.
There we go.
Nice.
Look at that.
It just came
Wow.
out. It's 352 pages, one photo short of 1,300, and I cover all 227 nuclear-powered submarines built or under construction for the United States Navy.
Cool.
And I sent one of these to every commander of every sub-squadron or group in the United States Navy, including the Chief of Naval Operations. I sent one to Proceedings, to Undersea Warfare, and a bunch of influential Navy that I know. And so I'm hoping it's going to be a good seller. It's really a memory book for guys who've been in submarines. If you've been in submarines at all, that means that you have been in one of the submarines in my book, because I cover them all the nuclear powered ones. And you're probably too old or nursing home if you were still on a diesel boat in recent memory. So, but it's something I've been wanting to do. I've always loved submarines. The world doesn't know what they do. They're black, they're stealthy, and they're deadly.
Check.
And you only see the top 4 feet of the hull and the sail. That's it. And you don't see them when they're at work.
And how long was that book in the making there, Jim? How long was that book in the making?
I started about 18 months ago.
Okay.
I mean, 18 months before I submitted it to my publisher. It's been 3 years now. I started at the beginning of this fake scandemic we were in. They're going to try to pull it in. They're going to try to pull another one. Robert's getting disgusted.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Well,
Hey,
can you hear me now?
Yes. What the hell did you do?
Okay, so I've discovered. Can you guys all hear me now?
yes, fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
What did you
discovered
do?
something new in the StreamYard settings. When I was setting up my new account earlier, I found that it had stereo audio. So I said, well, are you kidding me? I want to hear me in both sides of my head, and I want to hear the pan, right? So I turned that on. So I turned that on, which also requires you to turn off echo cancellation.
Well, goes to show.
Well, you
It was
sound
his
good
fault.
now. We all hear you, Robert.
Yeah,
Now
so I
Jim
think
looks, now Jim
I
looks
think
happy.
Jim,
He's
the
got his
reason-
mate back.
I think the reason Jim couldn't hear me is because I was in stereo and he's got a mono headpiece.
Because I only hear out of one ear.
See, so there you go. Now
go,
we've
Captain.
learned something about the tech. My apologies. It was my
That's right.
food pod that I didn't know I had food or pod.
It had to be you because it worked with Earl and I worked with Terry. So
Hey, the strange thing about this, I've got 2 shows on today.
Sounds good. So, Jim,
what?
Oh.
so you tell us more about the submarine. So now we all know at least somebody, at least I do, who's been on a boomer where they get the fast walkers zipping by, which is a UFO, underwater UFO. It's not flying anywhere. It's flying underwater.
Science Bob had one go by the USS Hampton. They said in excess of speed of sound underwater. So I don't know if that was 1,800 miles an hour because sound travels about 3 times faster in water than in air, and they don't know what went by them. They were 700 feet in depth when something went by them fast, and it wasn't a biologic; it was a man-made machine of some sort, or a machine of some sort, not necessarily man-made. So it's kind of exciting. And it's I'm sure glad that Robert figured out what the other problem was. I was going crazy. I was going to say, hey, if I can't hear the whole conversation, I'll catch you next week. But
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
it's-
so glad we figured it out.
Well,
the
you know,
crazy-
Jim, that
Sorry,
it's.
carry on.
I'm not going to say anything that you and I probably haven't already said in the
this is true.
days of conversations that we've spent over the last year.
I'm choking on that one.
But I will. I'd like to go back to this whole your topic of disclosure, and I know that Earl, picked up on it when I started earlier about what is that word. What it depends on the definition of that term that you use to go figure out what it is that's behind the curtain, right? So, as I said, I've got a few turds. I'll just toss them on the table, and we'll knock them around here and see what happens.
You've got a thing about turds, I'm worried.
So let's break down that word disclosure. Disclosure is essentially the same thing as apocalypse, and the original meaning of that word. Apocalypse means to unveil or to reveal. And to disclose is to unveil or to, reveal, show shit that's been hidden. So if you take that just as a general term, I think that there's multiple levels of this disclosure thing, which is now I'm going to dig into the bag, grab a turd and toss it out there. So the disclosure, the first level disclosure, I think is what people really are poking at, but they're using the technology and the UAPs, the unknown observed objects, whatever 3-letter, 4-letter acronym you want to throw at it.
Flying saucer.
The real top level of disclosure is: are we alone? Because that's all the other stuff, the tech and the shenanigans and the fuckery that's going on behind the scenes. Whether it's in the military or in the corporate side or governments or off-world or you got breakaway civilizations. There's a whole cadre of crap that's in this space. So disclosure, if you think about it from the very fundamental root of revealing whether we are alone or not, that happened millennia ago, tens of thousands of years ago. The disclosure of whether we are alone or not was already written down and captured, and it was the cosmology of these different cultures and different belief systems. So our origins is really the question. Where did we come from? Were we genetically modified? I think probably yes. Are we hybrids? Probably yes, especially if we are genetically modified. But nonetheless, we are here at the behest of someone else or something else. Now,
excuse me a sec. Sorry for butting in there, Robert.
Yeah.
Can you do me a favor? Because I can't seem to get through to Brian on his link. Do you have Brian's address?
I only am connected to him through Facebook.
Okay. Can you send him a copy of your link? If I send you a link to your,
I've got the link.
Okay, can you send it to him, please? Because he's having trouble. I'm having trouble connecting with him, and he asked me if I can get one of you guys.
Tell him I'll send it to him on Facebook.
Okay, he's probably listening.
So, my point is that disclosure about our origins is what's really afoot. It's what's really the end result or the end goal of everyone who's interested in this subject. And in my opinion, based on the research and the readings that I've done, like I say, are we alone? That was exposed tens of thousands of years ago. So that is really not the disclosure that's going on, in my opinion. I think that, and Mr. B, you alluded to this, and you did as well, Earl. The technology that has been sequestered for the last 70, maybe 100 years is the real.
More.
Yeah. Well, the stuff that we know that we've been able to not only apply our sciences and technology and math and knowledge and all that to, but what we've learned from that as well has improved our own science and technology and the advancements that we enjoy and are simultaneously frightened to death of in our current technology status, where we're at as far as the technology. Because the technologies that they've been holding on to, as B said, we would be in a completely different world if those technologies had not been sequestered and kept from us. From the ability of it to be something that the entire planet could benefit from. And the three most important are energy, water, and communication. If you can have each one of those in the palm of your hand in infinite resource, the entire world changes. Everything, our infrastructure has. I've talked to some of my contractor friends I know, and I was explaining to them. They said, "Well, I do electrical stuff. I'm not. I'm going to be out of a job." It's like, no, the cleanup is going to be massive,
Massive, yeah.
and it's going to require this
Yeah.
incredible. It's basically going to be kind of like what I think they're going to end up doing over in Gaza, which is there's nothing there. Everything's broke. You bring in the bulldozers, you scrape it clean, you clean it out, and you rebuild with a totally different set of paradigms, ideas, concepts, technologies. And I think that's what's going to happen. And that's what's needed here. So let me just finish on this disclosure thing, because I've got a couple of other things I want to toss out. So this disclosure thing is about the tech, it's about the secrecy, and it's about the furor that's going to be unleashed when people realize what's been done to them. They have purposely
and what they're keeping from us, and what they're keeping from the world.
Exactly. So,
yes. I mean, ridicule has been how they've dealt with the public since the Robertson panel in 1953, and it's carried on. I mean, we're still dealing with Neil deGrasse Tyson, just like it was Sagan 20 years ago, and they even J. Allen Hynek to a certain extent, back in the 50s. I mean, they got him for Project Blue Book, so they were hoping he would debunk it, but to their horror, he actually saw that there was there was a there, Gesundheit, Jim.
Yeah, and I think that it's
so
really.
I think that
Go ahead.
There's a lot of fear, I think, for the changing of the paradigm out there. I think right now we're still kind of, on the skirts of the Judeo-Christian, idea of us being the children created by a particular God, and I think that a lot of that, there's worries out there about how people are going to deal with the changing of the guards. But we dealt with this before. I mean, this happened back when the Manhattan Project happened. I mean, that changed. It changed.
And about the Northwoods document.
I know about
that was
what?
Northwoods. Right, the Northwoods document.
There's a lot of documents that are coming out right now.
So this one's been out a while, but the whole. There was an entire study commissioned by the Rockefeller Foundation on what disclosure would be, right?
Yes.
So that's the Northwoods, or the is it Northwoods? Brian will be. I sent Brian the link, B. So if you have any contact with him, let him know it's out there waiting for him.
Thank you, Leslie.
We're all blessing Jim here. Blessings.
Yeah.
So I mean, they've been at this specifically for a long time, just from the current governmental and societal and legal infrastructure is concerned. But this, the obfuscation, if you will, of all of the information about our origins and these space aliens that have been around for a long time. Yes, they're still here. Yes, they're on the moon. Yes, they're on Mars. Yes, there's probably a base somewhere on Io or one of the moons around Saturn. because the evidence just keeps pointing to it, right? Right.
Yeah.
So
Submarines are going to find the bases, actually.
all the stuff that's under the ocean on the floor, yeah. I mean,
No, definitely.
the stuff off the coast of California, off of Malibu, there
At long last.
is amazing. There he
I'm
is.
the guy that gets all those reports.
Yes.
Oh, hello, Brian.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
I'm
Doing
sorry about
good.
that, right? I couldn't, believe it or not,
to see
my
you.
StreamYard wouldn't pick up your messenger.
Oh,
But
no
yet,
worries.
I could pick it up on my phone. I don't understand why. Must be a glitch in the system. Got to
Technology these days.
Someone's getting
In the
comfortable.
background there has a unicorn, a stuffed animal unicorn in the background there, Brian.
Hey,
I don't know if that's
I
yours.
do feel
but,
safe with all that stuff
I've got my
behind there. Now,
wife
yours
is in the
will be-
panda nest. She's hiding in there. And then Winnie the Wonder Dog is right there.
Oh, beautiful,
Aw.
Well,
beautiful
hey,
baby.
yeah, well, it's wonderful.
Yep.
Are
Yep. I got a
It looks
couple
cold.
interesting
Are you cold?
announcements. What's that?
you cold
yeah,
or something?
we're in northern Nevada, and there's a pretty large house that we're in. And so instead of spending all the money and resources to heat every room all the time, it's just better and easier to walk around. Plus, if you end up going outside to mind the dogs or whatever is going on outside, you're always ready to go.
Yeah.
And then I'm rocking my typical skeptic podcast.
Oh yeah, I'm on his show. I'm on his show on the 17th on Robert's show.
Excellent. Excellent. Give
I'm
Robert
on the
Khalil my best, please.
Oh, certainly will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
we're hitting 40 degrees Celsius here today, I believe. So it's a warm one. It's a warm. And the worst thing of all, now we're sucking up all the moisture of winter, and it's humid. So then in about another few weeks, it'll be dry, hot and dry.
Forest fire season.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've already got a few started already. Anyway,
It's also
so
really
yours,
not
James.
humid. It was dry when I was there. It was either dry or temperate.
Yeah, one or the other. We get used to it.
I've said this before. I was a docent at Kitt Peak National Observatories for a couple of years, and just before I left, and if you've heard this before, just bear with them. Some of you haven't. But just before I left, we had a gathering of all the astronomers, technicians, and docents to beer and pizza. I don't think they had beer. I think it was popping pizza. And the keynote speaker was one of the top astronomers for the National Science Foundation, and he had returned from a worldwide conference on exoplanets. And based on proven mathematical formulas, with all the information that was gathered by all these different telescopes looking for exoplanets, that they said, based on our, and these are the National Science Foundation people and the people who really have all the credentials. He said that we now calculate for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets. And out of that incredible number, they calculate that, and these are using proven mathematical formulas that have proven to be correct in the past, or as correct as they can be verified, that there are 2 billion, that's what it'd be, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar size brown dwarf star as our sun in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. And to quote Jodie Foster's character in Carl Sagan's movie adaptation Contact, if we're the only ones with a waste of space. And what do you think, Brian?
Well, I mean, if it helps any, we already have people who are testifying as being part of these secret space programs and having been to these exoplanets, including, I believe, what is commonly known as Kepler 22b. And then you also have remote viewers to confirm all of this. And so when you combine testimony of others, and then just, I think a lot of people are still arguing back and forth on whether or not ETs exist, much less intelligent ETs exist. Other people, we trace our origin of humanity from Lyra, then apparently these Draco reptilians appeared, and then they were chased from Lyra to Vega and the Pleiades, and then we, humanity, were messed with or genetically seeded from 22 different star seeds, including the reptilians, which accounts for the reptilian back part of our brain. And then now we're heading towards the ascension and big changes. So, and that's been prophesied in so many different groups around the world for, as known as written history and before.
Yeah, isn't it interesting
We
that
haven't
the
even talked about.
precognition? Isn't it interesting about the precognition of those kind of things? I mean, prophecies and people who have seen or have touched the frequency of the future. To me, that's, the timeline is not as accurate to me as time stream. And it's like a stream with multiple currents, like you would see in a river or creek. So there's all these different influences and different aspects of the stream. And I think one of the things that, particularly the remote viewers, I've been following these guys for Courtney Brown, actually, back in the mid 90s is when I really got into it. But they have been their track record. And that's one of the things that, one of the reasons we have so much crap that we're having to face as far as the current systems. They're degraded and deplorable and, just basically mangled, manipulated, and corrupted systems, right? And you look at this stuff and you go, well, you can't fix any of that shit. It's all broke. Everything is in a state of end of life. So all of the systems, all the institutions, the technologies, the governments, the finance, the science systems, academia in general, all of the media, all this stuff is coming into it's like they've all are in the process of crashing and decomposing at full speed, running in the same direction. So
What's happened with Newtonian physics? Newtonian physics was left on the rocks of quantum mechanics, and we haven't even touched the idea of of interdimensional contact, which I think a lot of what we're seeing. I know that I bless you, Jim. Dr. Valet and Dr. J. Allen Hynek, they both wound up ending up preferring the interdimensional hypothesis for the origin of contact. For myself, I think that it's all the above. I think, we're seeing interstellar stuff, we're seeing interdimensional stuff, which just, that becomes a big fractal system. It just goes on ad infinitum. You can just take your numbers and just keep multiplying them as far as possibilities of places of contact. And then you bring in the yes from the future hypothesis, which I think is also viable. There's a lot of places where this contact could be and probably is coming from. Is it all in accord with, are all these different origin spots in accord with each other? That I don't know, that I can't tell you, but I would imagine maybe. I don't think this is their first rodeo, what's happening here on Earth. Just talking about the numbers we were talking about before, this is probably the umpteenth rodeo of first contact. And first contact, again, happened thousands of years ago. Yeah. Probably happened, millions of years ago.
A good example as far as changing timelines. Some of you, I've been down to Belize a couple of times. We have potentially have access to a pyramid that shows absolutely no tomb reading or anybody on top of the pyramid, and it's an isolated one out of a very, very large complex of 3 pyramids. But talking to the local archaeologists at the Nimlimput and Luban Pum, and they now say that the minimum age of the pyramids are 2,000 years old, but they're starting to think that, well, they could be between 20,000 years old and 200,000 years old.
Yeah.
And that the Mayans didn't build the pyramids. They found them abandoned and repurposed them, took them over. And where in the hell did 10 to 20 million people go? That's how many Mayans, they said, from just south of Mexico City to the northern part of Colombia, there were 10, 20 million. When they did a LiDAR scan over in Nicaragua, in an area that it was just deep jungle. There was no known megalithic or Mayan sites. And 800 square miles. It's not a big area when you're doing it by air. They figured there was 60 to 65,000 structures showed up.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, where did these civilizations go to? Most of it was due to bad farming and European diseases, and they were brutal. But I'm having a great time in Belize. It's just jungle gym. Yeah.
Well, as they say, like in India, the ancient texts and the tapestries they have, they talk about a nuclear holocaust, which happened 15,000 years ago, where it states that the iron rod, now 15,000 years ago, we're not supposed to have iron, but they described it as an iron rod that fell from the sky and it lit up like 10,000 suns. And they talk about the army throwing themselves into the river. Their fingernails are falling out and their hair is falling out. And then there's I think there's a water hole, I'll say, in India. I forget the name of it now. And apparently in that area, they have a high rate of people being born with 3 legs, 1 leg, 2 heads, 3 arms, and what?
Oh, politician, yeah.
The scientists went in and they found there was still a high radiation level in that area, and now they've actually closed it off. They actually thought it was a meteorite. Now they say it was a blast site because of the crystallized of the sand, right? So now
not only that, they wrote about this. I mean, if you look at the timeline, 15,000 years ago, that's antediluvian, before the great floods. And if you listen to some, that would be the time of Atlantis. And then when you look at like the Vedas, for example, or the Bhagavad Gita, that very much describes nuclear blasts. And then you've got the glass, sand turned into glass, which is very, looks pretty much like a nuclear blast wave could have done that. And then there's other accounts where some of the Vedas may have come from one of the colonies of these ETs who were here. And this is, at least I think, according to ZetaTalk.com. So a certain faction of Zeta Reticulans, they claim that it was a commander of a local base of an ET species who was basically teaching the locals knowledge and wisdom, but was kind of dumbing it down and doing it in a fairy tale story way. And then thus you get these very great and deep knowledge, but buried within monkey gods and blue people, which you had monkey gods and blue people, but it's kind of almost told as a nursery rhyme in some of these, if you're to read them.
Yeah.
We're the monkey gods, actually. That's our kind of our origin, we're the monkeys that made good. But I mean, you go to the monkey cage and it's not going to be that socially politically correct. I Göbekli Tepe, I mean, that took everybody by surprise. I don't think that the archaeologists and they that got past them, and they're not happy about it, but they had to change all their timelines.
And now they're proving it was deliberately buried
next to Göbekli Tepe. Now they're starting to unearth that, and apparently it's older. So
yeah.
Would you farsightprime.com? I believe they did remote viewing on Göbekli Tepe right here. The mystery of Göbekli Tepe. It's behind a paywall, but it's an hour and 36 minutes long, and it's fascinating. I'll have to watch it. I don't want to give away their stuff on their paywall. I'll plug them though. We'd like to, in fact, invite them to our upcoming conference we're holding in July. It looks like right now. It's still tentative. But and you'll all be invited, and we need more presenters. But we already have some idea of our wish list lineup, if you will. You know, one thing, Earl, you mentioned interdimensionals versus ETs, and I kind of wanted to. This has kind of come up a little bit in a way in previous discussions here, where it's like I always like to reference like the law of one. Like we all come from source, and then we all will go back to source, whatever our pathways and how long or direct or indirect that may be. And apparently many ETs, they subscribe to that too. It's a very simple universal law that many would subscribe to, I think, unabashedly. And in that, it's like if you've got God's source is way up there at like 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th density consciousness, let's say. You've got first density is like rocks and dirt and then gemstones, up to insects and plants and animals. Second density now, first to second. To third is like us human level, not really psychic, or our third eyes are really active. We're kind of more, you know, like eat crap, sleep mentality humanity. Versus
lumbering robots, and in the famous words of Richard Dawkins.
Yeah, sure, Richard Dawkins. I'd love to get Richard Dawkins and go at it with him sometime.
Oh, I'd love to get him.
That'd be really good. That'd be good. But let's say you know the fourth density is so like we're now getting our telepathic abilities, but we're not really yet connected, and it's supposed to be more of a rapid transition from third to fourth and to fifth. When let's say we're more empathic, telepathic, connected as a group mind, to sixth density consciousness, and now group minds of group minds, to now seventh density, to like other timelines and multiverses and types of consciousnesses with group minds, and then eighth godlike consciousness and above, right? And with these interdimensionals, it might be that a lot of them, the reason why they're invisible to so many of us, at least for now, is if they're resonating even at the lower fourth density and we're at the third density, then they're resonating like faster than that the camera we can see. As we in turn raise our density and consciousness, we will be able to now interact with them and perceive them. And so on a one level, that's interdimensional. But if an ET came from, say, Venus, but fourth density inner Venus, okay, or even fifth density Venus, and we need to ourselves elevate to the fourth density just to interact with them, let's say, does that make them interdimensional, or does it make it interplanetary, exo, or both? Right? And
for me, I would just say they are phase shifters, because apparently there is a space and an interface where they traverse, and apparently in our minds, and at least the conscious experiences that we have records for as long as we have been able to find them and read them, the non-local aspect of consciousness and its capability has been documented since we know. And in fact, it's actually, and a lot of people, it's fascinating how much people don't know. And then you throw in the misinformation on top of that, and you go, no wonder people walking around in a stupor. I mean, if you don't go check this shit out yourself, then you're going to get sucked into those same mind worms and mental fornication.
I think the way to simplify it is what really simple in a way is that we are multidimensional beings. And when you look at quantum theory, that's the merging of science, quote unquote, and magic and prayer and beingness. And it's why Einstein didn't like it. It was spooky action at a distance, because he's like, wait a second, if my thoughts here can affect something over there and vice versa, then wait a second, what gives? Like, oh my God.
At that point, his entire theory and all of the quantum stuff falls apart, which they all still do. Einstein was not only wrong, but the whole concept of the
relativism is wrong, but quantum stands up. Relativism was Einstein.
I would say that quantum is going through the next natural evolution and phase of the science paradigm. There's right now, Einstein and all the stuff that we have now is based on a grit model, okay, which is it's materialist, it's material, and it's mechanistic. And that that is the way they look at everything. So when you start from material and mechanistic, you're already limiting all of the other stuff that all philosophies prior to Descartes, in fact, the cosmology we were talking about a minute ago, you go back to the cosmology of all these different civilizations and cultures throughout the known stuff, again, that we've been able to find. Every one of them had, with the exception of Jainism and Taoism, but for the most part, every one of them had somebody up there came down here, or something magical happened and this person was there. And however they arrived, that person said X, Y, and Z. Here's a set of tablets. Here's some documents. Here's a way to go about and be fruitful and multiply. Okay. Every one of these. So if going back to the whole disclosure thing about our origins have been disclosed a long time ago, but because it doesn't fit the grit and the mechanistic model, and they can't attribute any of these esoteric, essentially what we're seeing is the blend of metaphysics and physics. They're starting to cross.
Yes.
And the whole
Alchemy.
concept,
Alchemy, baby.
alchemy is very apropos in my opinion. But what's happening is they finally it took quantum theory and mechanics, and this is my opinion, through the eyes and minds of people like Alfred North Whitehead, Tesla, Russell, Rife. I mean, John Keeley, Maxwell even knew it, Heaviside. I mean, all of these guys and many others were focusing on the ether, the energy in the atmosphere, in space, and not assigning it any limitations as far as its corporealness, other than it had to be corporeal. And that's one of the biggest problems with science today, is that in quantum mechanics, if you can't observe it, you have to mathematically model it. That doesn't mean that it's something that's going to work. It doesn't mean it's something that's going to materialize. You are theorizing on how you think the math that apparently makes up the entire universe, how that can tell us about how it actually works. Because that's the one thing that nobody knows. Nobody knows what gravity is. There's a whole bunch of theories. Nobody knows what electricity is. There's a whole bunch of theories.
Robert, are you familiar with there's certain books like the Book of the Umo? Okay. And
the Pneumo?
The Umo, UMMO. And they basically are one of these races that decided, screw the Prime Directive. We're not part of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, I take it. And they're willing, or maybe they are, that they're willing to share scientific knowledge. And their breakdown of gravity is excellent. ZetaTalk.com, their breakdown and critique of Einstein, and then their explanation of gravity is pretty good. I like the UMO one. I think I recall it was better. So, I think one thing you're speaking to earlier is how they, in this like Descartes kind of grid-like structure of, it's really transhumanism right now is the latest incarnation, because they want to erase the concept of soul from all of humanity. And when you are able to incorporate the concept of this dimensional or densities of consciousness and understanding the soul as being in there, and then you integrate that with more quantum direction of physics rather than the relativistic Einstein stuff, and then you take into account all the hidden science that's been kept from us. I mean, we've got TR3B's, the Ad Astra project already. They've already apparently understand that by using MFD's magnetic field disruptors to harness 0 point energy and to channel it in a certain way, you're able to destabilize a gravitic field and have like anti-gravitics or electrogravitics and thus gravitic, like anti-gravity propulsion. And then now you're no longer, that explains for why these craft can zip around at literally breakneck speed that would turn a pilot into mush if it was moving by conventional Newtonian physics. But instead, by bending gravity around the craft, they're not traversing through space as much as bending space around them. And then it's literally Star Trek, where there's no inertia. You don't even need inertial dampers at that point.
Well, and I think you're right. I would describe what's actually happening a little bit differently using both Leibniz and Dirac and Dirac C. And Tesla, again, he had this. The idea, the differences in the way that it's looked at as to what's going on. When we think of electricity, we think of it going through a wire, right? We've got these wires, copper wires, different materials, mostly copper, with a covering on it, and then we see electricity go through that. What Tesla found in his Colorado Springs experiments, and what Russell and Rife and all these other guys were all zoning in on, and particularly Dirac, he's a British physicist, so this is his Dirac C is 0 point energy. It is energy exists in the ether in kind of a foam, and the foam is the atmosphere that we breathe. In this room with the right device, I can have communications, energy, and water. I can just sit here and watch water appear out of my little device and fill up a bottle. Because the atmosphere is where the energy is. That's where the ether is. That's where space is. And all of the quantum models are trying to look at them as separate entities and not realizing that they are all just different frequencies in the materium and the ethereum. So you have the ethereum that we can't see, and then you have the materium, which is where the energy frequencies from consciousness manifest everything. And from there, you've got different phases and different delineations, different frequency sets that you can move in and out of, or they have their own reality as well. They can be have their own constructs, much like ours. Is that another universe? I don't know if you want to call it that. I think it's just another frequency set. And that's where the physics of today is missing. They're looking in the wrong place for the wrong thing. And the CERN is another example of that. They're trying to smash things down to their finite part and component, when the quantum mechanics says that everything is a wave. There is no static it is always motion. And a wave takes both space and time or duration to wave in.
Now, what is CERN is being used for even more nefarious purposes, such as splitting the timelines. I mean, talk about another target we can see if Jessica, the cryptid huntress here, can help remote view along with others is the current status of CERN and what it's meant for. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners of Terrence's show here are already familiar with the Gotthard Tunnel commemoration, where they basically looked like a Baphomet celebration ritual, with people dancing around with a lot of occult esoteric meaning of humanity being enslaved to a machine and falling through these portals to bring about like kind of an antichrist type energy. And not to sow any fear that's not going to happen, not in this timeline. And not if we can help it. The light's already winning, and there's one. But in the meanwhile, there's a puppet show between what I don't know. Most of my friends and I locally here, we put it at, if you make it to 2030, it's going to be a rough ride between now and then. But you make it past, good job. You're welcome to the Star Trek future. You can be part of building humanity 2.0. In the meantime, we need to push for justice and truth. And everyone should get their files back and fully open if they were in the super soldier programs or the Dark Fleet, for example, or Solar Warden or Radiant Guardian. And then they also need to open up healing technologies like medbed centers. And we need televised tribunals of justice to figure out who are the perpetrators and who are the victims in these programs, be they military abductions, Montauk Project with the time travel experiments, and not just experiments, but nasty, dirty tricks, if you will, on timelines to do things like erase Tartaria from the human zeitgeist or consciousness, if you will.
You know,
And
we
this,
talked about that. All right, that was a question I had for you on a show we did a while back. But before I ask you to revisit that, what stock weight do you put into any of this chatter about there's already been executions down at Guantanamo from the tribunals that have been going on, and then as some people have been replaced with face masks, so they're wandering around even though the original was executed. What's your thoughts on that whole meme?
okay, so first I like to lead with like the heavy hitting stuff. Okay. Number one, and I remember, I think I'll give props like Dutch Sense, for example. He was on YouTube and he's been banned on and off, but he was pointing out the directed energy weapons hitting Paradise, California when that was happening at time of, I believe it was Paradise or maybe it was Southern California fires. But he literally had like high microwave or infrared frequency in a straight beam coming from like north of Oregon down to Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting screenshots of that and all that. But really, there's also earthquake maps where you've got the globe and it showed earthquakes happening in perfect lines, generally at 10 kilometers exactly in straight lines, for like across the Pacific Ocean or underneath Europe, for example. Or usually they're at 3 kilometers, 5 or 6 kilometers, and 10 kilometers. And that's been reported by people like Phil Schneider types. I don't know who exactly in the SSP community, but people confirm, yeah, that's like the tunnels that move the maglev super fast underneath the earth. And so if those tunnels are being exploded by what look like nuclear signatures, because those are not seismic plate tectonics, those are more read as apparently nuclear explosions or detonations, and that's happening in a row, then that tells me that, okay, someone's taking out bad guys somewhere down there, because that network up to now has been run by the so-called bad guys, people who would like, turn this into a transhumanist freak show if they could. And maybe there's going to be a diversion of timelines. But when it comes to people being rounded up, I also reference there's Monkey Works online, and he talks about the air traffic that's being shown over air bases around the country, military traffic in particular. You've got other sources like aerials of Guantanamo Bay before and after the Trump years. Trump, I'm not like necessarily Trump, but my understanding, at least my analysis from my understanding, is that he was approached by so-called white hats who were furious at the assassination of JFK back in 63, and then the brother, whatnot, Bobby Kennedy, and 72 was it? I forget, 69.
That was 68 because
68. Yeah, the ambassador. Yeah,
MLK was killed a few months after that.
Right. Yeah, then that was Summer of Rage. Okay, yeah. So
taking them out, yeah.
Whew. And then so off of that, they apparently approached Trump with this plan to restore a constitutional republic. And that's where you get all this chatter about people being rounded up behind the scenes in face masks. And, in seeing some of these actors or actresses or personalities, there definitely has been like what looks like face masks. What, I subscribe to, for the most part, the things that Donald Marshall and the people that the circles that I run in, the secret space program survivors, the MyLab people, the Montauk Project, the super soldiers, the 20 and back people, they're reporting on similar. I don't know. Some of them are reporting on cleanup. Some of them are just trying to figure out things. But I know that there's a lot happening behind the scenes.
One of the things that was curious to me, and one of the reasons I wanted to ask you is, if you think about it from a strategy perspective, yes, I think that there's a bunch of people that have good intentions and that are really getting involved and making changes behind the scenes, because it has to be done that way, because there's so much of the crap is behind the scenes. And you can't just blatantly go out and, take stuff out that is so entrenched and or has, other implications around it. You can't just take it out. But my thought was this: if I heard somebody talking about, well, there's, been more executions on Guantanamo Bay as a result of the tribunals. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you were if you really wanted the maximum impact, you wouldn't do the execution in private. You'd make it public, which is one of the things
Well,
that you've talked about, right?
So
I mean,
yes
you
and
want to
no.
see
I can
well,
explain
listen,
that.
I'm not saying just execution. I'm talking about the public accountability.
Well,
And
see, no, my understanding, the answer to that's an excellent observation, Robert. I think there's a reason there, okay, and the reason, my understanding, is that they so-called the quote unquote white hats, and the longer they wait, the longer we might perceive them as gray hats, perhaps. But I don't. Perhaps some of them, perhaps, but I think there are white hats, and the Marines and the people, the forces that they're being deployed to go into underground tunnels and perform cleanouts. And I've seen video of that. Mostly it's automatically the good stuff gets banned from Facebook and YouTube and ends up on Telegram and other places, for example. But these cleanouts are happening, and oh shoot, what was I going to say? They
well, my point was the importance of missing the strategic opportunity to take advantage of public accountability.
No. So the reason why is they know that once they pull the trigger and do these long rumored emergency broadcasts, and then where they literally shut down the airwaves for 10 days, and they're going to apparently broadcast basically nonstop coverage of basically executions and trials and things like that, and to explain,
you think
all
they
of
can
this.
do all that in 10 days and get the job done?
I think what
What's
they wanted
the strategy of doing
Start at the top.
right there.
Well,
So because if you do the math, let's say there's 8 billion people. Let's say 0.1% of those 8 billion people, or 0.01%, is a bad guy, elite, like bloodsucker, pedophile, whatever. That's like 8 million people, let's say. Okay, now with those 8 million people, let's say you got 10 times 10 at least henchmen. So now they've got 80 million henchmen and 8 million baddies to round up. That's including all their families and everyone who you would consider on the side of maybe the negative agenda for now. Okay,
Right.
Not to be judgmental. Okay, that's a lot of people to round up. Now, apparently there's been a lot of chatter on all these sealed
Where is
indictments.
this information
thousands of
coming
sealed-
from, Brian?
So
Just
okay, so
maybe just
many. Okay, so I've got so
mercy.
many. I've got so many sources, Earl, that for me, I mean, it's
All
like,
right.
and what I try to do is I try to get at least two different yes, this is happenings, confirmations, to then say this is probably happening. But that's why I use people like Dutch Sense to look at what's happening globally, and with the earthquake maps and the aerial shots, and Monkey Works to see military air traffic, and then people who are channeling different groups, whether it's on the Galactic Federation of Worlds, or remote viewers, or direct contactees, or whatnot. And I'm trying to make heads or tails and put it all together, and work with excellent
I
remote
haven't heard
viewers
of
like Jessica.
any trials at Guantanamo. I mean, where's that
That's
coming
been
from?
a lot of people are talking about.
No,
So a lot of people
that's been
on the
out there
Q side, the truther
Is this
movement,
like
the Anon
QAnon
side.
stuff, or where
So
is this coming from?
so to explain QAnon, so I want to break down QAnon. QR is like a military level of intelligence that originated that's apparently around like the JFK days to like now. It's a very high level of military intelligence, and they've been leaking information. Anonymous is more a decentralized hackers collective that's global, and they from time to time have leaked a lot of important information to WikiLeaks. So that's where a lot of the leaked emails of the DNC, where they're doing a lot of pedophilia code as recognized in the FBI documents. Hot dogs, nachos, pizza, those are all recognized pedophilia stuff that I could find you the FBI document if you want.
Yeah,
okay?
well, I've read some of that stuff, but I don't know how much I pitch in with that, to tell you the truth.
Well,
I mean,
I can
sometimes
go deep with you.
hot dog, and
Oh, I can.
hamburgers.
Well, why would Obama fly in hot dogs from Chicago for $65,000 to the White House?
Now.
Well, no, the Bush, the Bush.
I might
no,
be
Earl,
in the wrong group.
The Bush
here,
family.
I'm
the
actually
Bush,
a Democrat.
The Bush family. Hold on a
Yeah,
second.
guys, let's
I don't
leave
care.
the
Like I
politics
said,
out
I'm not
of
a
this.
big Trump supporter. I support him to the extent we
Yeah.
want to liberate humanity. But the
let's
Bush
leave the politics.
Bush family had the Bush male prostitute cowboys too. So don't get me wrong. I'll go after the Republicans as well. Okay, for their dirty
don't really
dalliances
have
and
anything
dealings.
against George Bush, except the the Contra
but
thing.
hey, guys,
his dad
let's
wasn't
hey,
very good.
let's stick back to ufology. Let's keep politics out. The only thing I want to talk
Yeah,
about.
I'm sorry.
politics is-
I'm not really
Hey.
into the political stuff, you guys.
I mean,
Well,
I'm just
kinda
mentioning.
out of
He asked for the data, whether you believe it or not. I gave you my answer. Okay, I
Anyway.
have a lot more information, far
Well,
more.
thank
This
you.
is the first time you're hearing about it.
Well,
Then
there's a lot of
I can point you
information
I've
to a
heard
lot
a
of
lot of
links if
that,
you want.
actually.
There's a
But-
lot
but-
of
but as
information
far
I
as-
have not heard.
I've looked at a lot of those links, and I
Right.
did actually do some personal
Okay.
investigation
I'm trying to-
into it, and a lot of
so I'm
QAnon.
Well, I'm
kind
trying to
of
explain. So you
bullshit
got
to me,
Q.
actually, but-
Q. I'm trying to explain. This is the genesis of Q. Anonymous.
Wasn't it like his
decentralized.
father and his son that were in the Philippines that kind of came up with the QAnon thing, and it just kind of rolled over and got a lot of notice out there in
No.
political world.
I'm trying to explain. Anonymous has been around for decades. They've been hackers on this scene for a while. So they didn't just pop out of nowhere. Okay. And then Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, they didn't just pop out of nowhere. Okay. And then you've got groups who then say, well, we're part of Anonymous, and we like the fact that Q has leaked information to Anonymous and perhaps WikiLeaks. And then for that reason, there's now QAnon. And then you've got these PSYOP groups who are now being fed to give a bad name to both Q and Anon by running negative QAnon groups and then trying to get people to buy things like Trump bucks. Okay, but that's not to say that there's no such thing as Q or Anonymous or QAnon or fake QAnon, because all four of those things do exist. Thank you.
Well, you know what, guys? Look,
Well,
can
I
just
don't have a
chuck
whole
in-
lot of hope and
May-
faith
may I-
in politics. Period.
Yeah,
I'll
I
tell
don't
you the
trust
truth.
politics anyway.
Even
But,
in
hey,
the guys
let's
I
just-
tend to vote for, I don't have a whole lot of, I mean,
I
you
mean, I
kind
can't
of
vote
want
for
to
Q,
vote
so-
the least caustic and the most, you hopefully those are going to do the least damage out there, and it's kind of
Is
more
is my
damage
microphone
assessment
working?
and having to hypothesize, well, how can this go wrong?
I mean, this fake Biden administration is doing just
I can hear
wonderful
you.
for the
I can hear
economy
you,
and the
Eric.
world, and the COVID stuff. It's great. I mean, Scamdemic has been wonderful for all of us. I can't
Well, it
imagine how
wasn't
we
good
could
for
do
me.
better.
I don't know about you.
I mean, California,
awful.
with its woke politics, I had to flee. Because San Francisco was the top of the world 20 years ago. 23 when I was there for 20 years. It was wonderful. It's not quite
I
the
kind
case.
of love where I live. We've got the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance going on right now, which is getting a lot of opening
The
a
LA
lot
homeless
of doors.
situation's off the hook right now. And it's
Earl,
getting
are
dangerous.
you in Southern
That way,
California?
in a lot of places.
Hollywood,
Yes, I
yeah.
am. Yes.
And what part of
I'm
Southern
not in
California?
Hollywood. I'm actually in the valley. I'm in kind of a rural area. I'm in Winnetka area.
Oh yeah, I
of
grew
San
up in
Fernando Valley.
Southern California. I
Mhm.
was born in Long Beach and traveled all over and spent the first 28 years of my life
Do you
there. And
think that this is like the
That's back
armpit
when
of the
it was
universe, or do you like it here? I kind of like it in California. I'm
Well, I
definitely
like
around
it.
all the media stuff. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of work with TV
I
and
got-
getting to talk about UFOs a lot, which is a good thing.
yeah. Well, I got fed up with it back in '85.
This
so
is I was born here. I was raised here.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I was born
I
and,
never
and
really got
raised there,
fed
but
up with Southern California. I'm kind of happy here.
it was getting too crowded for me. It was getting there was too much nonsense going on.
I got the
even in-
beach
but
15
remember-
minutes away. I've got, traffic.
There's a bit of lag going on there with your Earl.
California is not that bad of a place to live. It's actually a wonderful place to live. So
well, it
just my
was certainly
opinion.
when I grew up there.
My opinion.
Um,
Take it with a grain of salt.
Are you?
Yes, I've seen this stuff, and I don't really believe the QAnon guys. I think that it was kind of bullshit, to tell you the
That's
truth.
the FBI.
I mean,
Earl,
I did
that's
look
the
very
FBI's.
deeply into
That's,
it.
that's the FBI. You can call it QAnon all you want, but that's just
I
the
know.
FBI's own.
I know, but the
own
FBI's
documentation.
got operatives too that want to tilt the
Hey,
way
come
that you
on, guys. Hey,
think
dude,
they're
now they're
The
proving that
FBI is
the
faking
FBI
it.
and
The
the
FBI is
CIA are all
faking
corrupted.
pedophile code words to
there's
search down in their
disinformation all
investigations.
over.
That makes a lot of
There's
sense.
misinformation and disinformation all over the place, and everything that
So the
comes
FBI
across
is
my
putting
path.
out disinformation about pedophile code words for why, sir?
Well, they might be trying to. I don't know. It depends on who the author was and
You
what their
don't know.
motives were. But
It's
there's a lot of
because of
mis- and
Trump. Because of Trump.
disinformation.
That's why.
Well,
You see
I'm not
these are all
really.
pedophile
I don't.
symbols, and this is being circulated by the
Yeah.
FBI in their own bulletins,
Hey,
so that the
listen, can
FBI
we
can
change the
identify their
subject?
agents.
Can
Yeah.
we change the subject? I
Well,
want to ask a
anyway, you
question.
guys.
I would like to ask
Probably
you a
this is
question.
probably the wrong podcast for me to be on if we're going to talk
Oh,
political
sorry.
stuff, because you're not
Hey,
going to
no,
like
I don't. I don't like political stuff so
It's
much.
okay.
The only thing political I
All
like
right.
to get on with
You
is,
know,
is when the
I
government to
stay
come up and start
apolitical
being
on social
transparent.
media. I mean, I honestly do.
Now, I
No.
believe in
I
transparency
actually
from the
stay
government, no matter who's
apolitical
in power.
on social media. And
I
Earl,
can't hear a
there's-
word. When
Earl,
young
there's a
people are
delay.
sleeping,
Earl, there's a
In my
delay.
local
You've
group-
got you're breaking up
Oh.
both audio and video.
Oh well, we're all talking at once. In what I notice is in my local MUFON meetings here, I have just as many Republicans as I have Democrats. In my field investigator group, I have as many Republicans as I have Democrats. And much like Congress, it seems like the UFO phenomena is the one place where we all agree and we all become friends and we work together, and there's no ugliness. There's no. I haven't had to get the sign yet, but I've thought very seriously about having a sign made up that says, when you walk up to our MUFON meeting, it says, please put your, leave your dogmatism and your politics here in this box. We'll take very good care of it. And when the meeting's over, you can rejoin yourself to your
I agree.
politics and your
I totally
dogmatism.
I agree with you,
please
Al.
keep an open mind when
100%.
you walk in this door. And that's
So,
kind
Earl,
of
I've
the
got
way
a
I am.
question. Earl, I've got a question for you
Sure.
that goes back to where we started on this topic. Remember, I said I had a few turds in the bag I wanted to throw on the table, and the first one was
I
that.
didn't take you seriously.
Well, the first one was the whole concept of disclosure, and I think you
Yeah.
agreed with what my position was
sure.
on.
That's
So the second piece
disclosure
of data, and I'm thinking you're one of the
many
best
years.
guys. Yeah, I'm thinking you're one of the best guys to validate this. I heard recently that the reports from 2010 to 2020, you take all of those reports for anomalous atmospheric anomalies, right? Whatever they are. And then in 2021 up through 2022, it had quadrupled the 10-year period from 2010 to 2020. Are you seeing that kind of increase in reports coming in that has been significant from that time period? Has there been an increase?
I've seen a difference in things reported. Okay. What I notice is that there's a lot more contact scenarios that are being reported, which makes sense to me. Like
Actual
things are kind of
encounters.
ramping up. Yeah. There's a lot of encounters, or people will see a UFO and then it's suddenly upon them, and they have so many missing hours with their family or whoever they were with. I see a lot more of what I would consider probably our UFOs, or maybe something that we're working with in tandem with this other intelligence with, as far as the black triangles and the V-shaped craft with the little lights along the sides, which, I mean, as far as the black triangles go, or TR 3B or Aurora or whatever you want to call it. Some people from Lockheed that I've spoken with are almost like ready to raise their hands up and say, "Yeah, we did it." I mean, there's always that little, you've got a little caveat there where they can't quite say that, or 95% of this is from us, but it's definitely interesting the craft that people see over and over again. And it seems like there's a lot of what I also see are high strangeness events where, I mean, to me, the better reports, it's like all the science is sort of aligned, and then there's some obvious absurdity that's put in there by our visitors. It's almost to the point where I consider that like a marker, where you'll see a case where everything, it just aligns with the scientific. You could approach it almost with the scientific method, except that you can't repeat it. Right? Maybe you can if you can draw UFOs and with C5 or something. But what I notice is that it's all perfect, and then there's like it's like the Eagle River case where the aliens insisted on cooking up pancakes for Joe, Simonton, the farmer that saw this craft. I mean, that was one of Valet and Hynek's favorite cases was the Eagle River case. And to me, that weird bit of absurdity where they cook him these terrible tasting buckwheat pancakes that taste like cardboard. And I guess that he kept a couple of them. And they were put through laboratory tests, and it was just stuff you could get here on Earth with pure water. That's what the entities asked him for, was pure water from his artesian well that he had. That's a beautiful UFO case. And it seems like my favorite cases, and I see more of them all the time, seem to be a little bit like that, where it's like, this is scientific, this is coming at you, and all these, there was a radar hit, this person caught it on their radar unit, and then this bit of absurdity happened. And I think that they're maybe doing this to our science or idea of what science is.
When you say they, who do you mean? Our visitors.
Our visitors.
So you think that a multitude. You think there may be some shenanigans afoot, maybe playfully or for some intentional direction.
Yeah, I think they're ribbing us. They're kind of using humor to show us that we're maybe looking the wrong direction for things.
You would think by now that they would get enough feedback that the whole probing thing is not really, there's a select few of humans who get into that, but for the most part, in general, it's not something that
probing case.
No, but I mean,
I'm on case 1003. Okay, I'm currently working on my 1003rd case that I've personally investigated over the last 9 or so years, and out of all those cases, I've never had a person probe. It just that hasn't happened. So
is that an urban myth? Urban myth, or is it just one of those rare things that somebody actually imagined happened because they wanted it to?
No, I think that probably happened.
There are people. There are people who have been the victims of military abductions where they're sexually assaulted, and then by people literally dressed up in gray suits. So that's one scenario. Mm-hmm. You've got Sue Whitaker. Sue Walker.
And
listen, guys, there was a case in Sydney where some gentleman woke up and there was an alien strapping on top of him. Yeah, on top of him. And she was Asian looking, blonde hair. There was another accomplice there with that alien. But apparently the hair follicle that was left behind doesn't match up to human DNA. Again, there's a lot of cases like this happening. But again, look, I like
sure there was the Boaz, the one in Brazil that was like that. Yeah.
But
Well,
I want to get back to another important thing where I started off originally on the show, where we're talking about the direction where you are. Now, I'm going to ask each and one of you a question.
Well, I think we're trying to be shocked out of our ennui, maybe.
Yeah, but if
I think that
if
our,
I
our
ask you,
visitors
Al,
are maybe trying to shock us out of our ennui and out of our usual way of thinking and the scientific method that we hold so dear. I think that they're kind of making fun of that, even though that's still what I try to adhere to as well as I can. Although the scientific method per se doesn't really work with UFOs unless you can call one back to
No.
repeat, and so far.
Well, I
haven't been able
would
to do
say,
that.
Earl, that the scientific method is just a process that makes sense. The reason that it
Mhm.
may not work is because the information that we put into the equations and the formulas and the models, the math, and the machines they're not tuned properly. Was what I was saying earlier. This whole concept of the ether is where the mechanistic, materialistic science models fall down. Things like non-local consciousness, uh, the phasing in and out that Brian was talking about earlier, with the different ways in which that apparently happens. That explains to the paranormal type events and so forth. But the technologies that enable that um, they've been around for a long time, for decades. And in fact, Brian, I wanted to mention this to you earlier. We were talking about Durac C and 0 Point. Are you familiar with the Strike Foundation?
I'm not familiar with the Strike Foundation. I'll reference Robert. I think it's Peter Fuller's books on the
Yes.
Solar Warning series, and
Yes.
that's where he describes multiple times the magnetic field disruptors and 0 Point energy and the Ad Astra program.
And one of the interesting things, and I haven't read that, but I think he probably touches on, the key to it is geometry. The Strike Foundation has created a set of geometric, the parabols, all of the different models, all of the, like the 12 Pythagorean and Platonian geometric shapes, okay, decadedrons and so forth. They figured out a way to just take those shapes and to align them and put them together in certain patterns where they, in and of themselves, because of the geometry of the shape and the interaction with the ether, creates energy. So if you think about like the stories that we've heard about using a pyramid is one of them. Yes.
Well, I want to give you an example. This I came across at the Stairways to the Stars Ascension Fest conference they just held at the Luxor in Las Vegas, right? And it was a great conference. And Robert Potter and his table, he had a video clip of how basically there's a cell phone and then like an EMF meter. Yeah, I'll see if I could get this to work. And then like the noise coming off the cell phone was like 282. And then he brings over the pyramid on top of the cell phone and the meter, and then it went down to like 86.
Yeah.
And then my friends, I have two of my housemates and business partners, and one's a business associate working his way up to partner. They can see auras, they're sensitive to energy, they can do healing. And the one already told to Jaden, hey, this is what it's supposed to do. It's just quiet it down. And he put it on. He's like, it does. He could tell it felt quieter to him. And then when we had John put it on, we didn't tell John what this is supposed to do. We said, just put it on and tell us what you feel. And he's like, he like almost instantly, like 3 seconds after putting it on, he's like, that's weird. It's quieter. What the heck? And it's like, so, I kind of had someone saying this is what it does, then a little video showing that's what it does, and then Jaden I told what it does, and he confirmed it, sure. And then John blind tested, he said this is what it does. So for me, where do I get my data? That's how I operate, like that.
Well, you're just giving a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Geometry, in particular sacred geometry or super geometry, is this thing that has been, again, one of those consistent things throughout all of the civilizations and all the cosmologies of these civilizations. There are certain shapes that they became accustomed to or used in order to achieve their and maintain their civilization. If you go back to the Atlantean records, or at least what we have of them from Blavatsky and through Casey, they everything was powered by the two-eyed stones, and not two-eyed. It's Toued and then eyed. So it's the idea that shapes within the ether can attract. In fact, that's what a lot of the water solutions that are coming out now are based on. If you have the right number of holes and the right size in an item in a box, then simply by it being in the atmosphere, being around it, and it being in the atmosphere, it will collect the water molecules in the air around it, producing free water. The same thing happens with energy. That's what the Strike Foundation. I think you'll find that he's got some great videos, Brian. You'll enjoy that. Randall Carlson has been heavily involved with him on that project.
Okay.
So the idea that we can use the geometry that we've uncovered in the cosmos, in our reality, to give us free water, free energy, and free communication it will change, as we said earlier. It's going to completely demolish all of the shit that we're doing now and replace it with an entirely new capacity and capability. Can you imagine if every person on the planet had free water, free energy, and free communication?
Yes.
It would completely just change the entire paradigm and then you throw on top of that, and we are here because of these folks. So you get our origins all at once, and you get the reality of how consciousness, how our reality works, and it's not Einsteinian, it's not even Newtonian. It's much more complex yet simple than those. It's not,
even if you brought out all those technologies, the system as we know it would collapse overnight. It would collapse. There'd be billions of people out of work. I mean, it's like
but they had free water though.
Ever see Star Trek? You had billions of people out of work in
Things are
Star
going to
Trek
go
too, and they're okay.
to hell in a handbasket overnight. All right, it's just like, I mean, if now we have electric cars, right? The Elon Musk, he went and kind of, took over that whole thing, and everybody's wanted a Tesla. Now people want to give them back to them, But the thing is that it didn't cause the oil industry to go broke overnight. No, I mean, it's quite honestly, it's helping us to clean up the air, and I'm all for that technology.
And
I think that
this
is probably the stuff.
The problem, Earl,
kind
is that none of the technology is ready.
Hmm? Yeah,
none of the
I don't think it
technology
is
that's
either.
involved is ready for prime time.
Let Earl finish what he's saying. But
it's going to take a while for that to come up to square, and hopefully by that time the people that are like running the fortunes that I mean, that's the major, from what I've heard from people from the DoD, from my own mother, for God's sakes, she said, well, this will never be told to the public that we're being visited and that we're not alone in the universe, because they're afraid that fortunes will crumble and that fiscally will just be decimated. And I don't believe that, actually. I think that they've had enough time now that they've been able to look at this from all sides. Those who are, in power, in officialdom, and I'll tell you, I trust most of them as far as I could throw my computer, my my car. So, but these are the people that we put our trust in, and we hope we can trust to get some truth out there, and hopefully they've looked at this. And my guess is that when this technology comes out, it will that it will be let out in a way to where it's not going to destroy our economy. I'm sure there are people that are crunching numbers right now. I mean, it's almost inevitable, I think, that some form of disclosure is going to happen. With that, the technology is going to have to be
I'd like to ask
revealed.
Jim a question. Jim, your very good friend Bob Lazar. Now he works
talk Bob. I love Bob.
He works on hydrogen power, doesn't he? He's a believer in hydrogen vehicles.
He did for a number of years. And the EPA and the Highway Administration jumped on his butt because he was offering a solution that cost almost nothing. And when I was up visiting him last May, we were back in his lab. I think I've sent you, B. I think I've sent you a shot of that.
Yeah, S5 wasn't it?
Yeah, I said, how about your unit for making hydrogen using solar panels that'll go into a door eventually, and you can power your car with little or no, very little modification. He said, yeah, the EPA made all those materials cost 10 to 20 times what they were when he initially put together the hydrogen making conversion kit for a regular car. Now, Bob, I've had an opportunity to know him for a long time, not intimately, but I feel very close to him. Both, he and his wife, she's a sweetheart. Oh gosh. And he is as happy as I've ever seen him. He's always been in a good mood. He's always been sort of happy-go-lucky. But the man's brilliant, and he has a photographic memory.
Jim.
Yeah,
I know quite a few people that knew Bob when during the time period that certain people have put to question, like did he go to Caltech? Yes, he went to Caltech. I mean, I know the guy that used to drop him off and pick him up from Caltech. Also, the ex-head of security from Caltech. He happens to work at Otis College, where I teach a ufology class at. And he says that everybody knew Bob. Bob definitely got his doctorate, and Bob was exactly who he said he was. And when he went public, the old head of security said that there was a standing order to arrest him if he stepped foot on Caltech. He said somebody was not very happy with Bob in officialdom, apparently. But every time I dig into Bob and his background and everything else, and it's like Stanton Friedman, of course, railed against Bob, but Kathleen Martin, who is my mentor,
his name
loved
was
Bob. Yeah. She thought Bob was right.
His name was in the Sandia phone book.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
An Element 115. He just made that up 20 years ahead of its time.
20 years before NASA announced it.
Yeah.
Right.
When more than one person talking, I can't hear anything.
Sorry.
I hear on one ear, my brain can't filter it out. So I forgot where now I was going next, but Bob is. I've always believed Bob is who he said he is. And to add to that is my friendship with Ben Rich. No one can take that from me, and he said it directly to my only ear that works. He said, we have things out there that are 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. And if you say movies like Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. I said, Ben, you want to expand upon that? He said, no. And then he had the nerve to die on me about 10 days later. But I had a friendship that with Ben Rich. We talked once a quarter for over 20 years. That's why the Minnesota Air Guard Museum got A12 number 128. That's my baby. And everybody said, "You'll never pull it off." And I did. And it just tickles the hell out of me. And now the CIA stole it and is sitting on a pylon in Washington, D.C. But I've had a time in my life. Now I'm tramping through the jungles of Belize for the second time this year. And,
that doesn't sound like a bad destination, though, Jim. That sounds like a lot of fun, and that's in your wheelhouse.
He's the youngest senior I know. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, when I fell at the Lubantum pyramid complex near Punta Gorda, I at the very, very end of it, it's about a mile and a quarter walk, a mile and a half walk around, and the steps are real steep. And I had real bad balance. I had my auditory nerve severed in my left ear, so I only hear on my right ear. So I only have my balance is terrible. Plus, I'm 78 and I got artificial knees. So I didn't want to take these real narrow steps going down because it was steep. So I grabbed hold of this tree and I stepped around. Next thing I knew, I'm going like this into it, and I got a gash just below my knee and a puncture wound. Because I gave my blood and DNA to the Mayan gods, they turned around and they directed us towards the village of Santa Cruz. And the rest is going to be history. So, I mean, it's and I believe I was supposed to be there. I believe everybody.
Probably you were. Yeah.
When's the next expedition taking place, Jim?
No, I'm gonna be talking to Jared tomorrow. He's been talking to Alfredo, who's the mayor, the director of NISH, which is the National Institute for Culture and Heritage. She spit in our face, as far as I'm concerned. That's not the politically correct way to describe it. But here's three people coming from the United States, one from Boston, one from Minnesota, and me from Arizona. We're going to a foreign country, going to Belize. You know, the official language of Belize is English. It used to be, British Honduras. And we had a confirmed appointment 3 weeks before, 4 weeks before, for that particular Tuesday at 3 p.m. And at 3 p.m., we were, outside her office and wondered where she was. Well, she was still in a meeting, and we were there for, longer than she's there. I said, well, what time's the meeting to be over? She said 5 o'clock. And I said, okay, we'll meet her afterwards. We came, from a foreign country to talk to you. So I don't work after 5 o'clock. So they're going to the village. They're going to talk with the elders of what we have to offer. All excited about it. We were told that they have, the village itself, because the village was isolated from the real world up until 2012, and that this pyramid complex was right next to the village. Through legislation, exempted the village from turning over the pyramid or all contents to the State Museum and NISH, which is the National Institute for Culture and Heritage. We want to play by all their rules. We don't irritate anybody, but we want to employ I asked, I think it was Alfredo's brother. I said, we're almost to the top of this new pyramid. No one's touched it. It hasn't been pillaged. Everything seems to be intact. He said, he says, if I had the money tomorrow, how long would it take you to clear this pyramid down to the base? He said, 3 weeks maximum. I said, if I had the money today, when could you start? And he said, at sunup tomorrow morning. It's starting to toughen. It's just peel the whole thing back. So we had to get in that position so we don't put ourselves in any type of legal jeopardy. So we're dealing with an attorney there in Belize. And unfortunately, they do speak English. That's the official language. Even though a lot of times when we're in the village, when the governing council's talking, they're really going back and forth. They'll speak in their Mayan dialect. And of course, I don't hear for beans anyway, so it doesn't make any difference whether they're speaking English or Mayan. Most of the times, I don't understand what they're saying. So, but that's just one of the pains of being a hard charging 78-year-old.
You're a seasoned citizen, and you're pushing your way not only through the streets but through the bush. And you made the you made the point earlier about the dating. You know, anywhere from 2 to 20, and then possibly even 200,000 years for those structures down there. One of the things that I think is another aspect of this whole disclosure thing is, you know, I would mention origins, but it's our history. And I think in Mesoamerica, Siberia, and the Sahara, as well as you go pick any 5-10 mile radius around any coastline and go down into the ocean and find out what's there. Dwarka was found that way. They're finding stuff all the time, you know, when people go look, but there's not that many people looking, and there's a lot to look at. But the more that's done, the LiDAR that Jim mentioned, 65,000 buildings they had no idea was there. They fly a plane over and they go, oh, there's a lot of trees and bushes down there. And that's about it. There might be a river, a creek running through, but when they finally use the technology and the right frequencies in LiDAR to go apply that to something that they couldn't see if they didn't use that tool anyway, and to find out that it was this massive 20 plus million people at any given time. And all across Mesoamerica, when they start doing LiDAR in the Sahara, they're going to find all kinds of stuff. They're going to go, well,
they already have. They already have in a couple areas.
Yeah, and all that's going to happen, there's going to be this constant disclosure of, oh, that myth was actually real. Oh, that place that was some, you know, story off of, you know, too much cannabis and mushrooms around the campfire. Yeah, that place is real too. So there's going to be this additional disclosure of our history with the findings in these regions. And Jim is just, he's leading the charge down there in Belize. And I mean, what they're going to come up with, you know, I know a little bit about that project, and, you know, one of the end goals is to have some mini series at a minimum of the whole excavation and the work down there. Means History Channel makes a boatload off that. Discovery Channel, TLC, all these channels, you know, there's a lot of money, a lot of content that needs to be filled. And when you get something like what Jim's working on, I'm thinking it should be pretty awesome. And I would definitely sign in to watch all of that.
So we had
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Guys, yes, what is it, Brian?
Yeah, Smoky Monkey, he asked a question of how do we know that these 20 and backs aren't reincarnation? That's a great question. Okay. You've got books by Tony Rodriguez, who's a survivor, testifier of this. And then he was blind remote viewed by the Farsight Institute with Courtney Brown. Okay. And when they remote viewed him, what they said is that doing blind targets, people were describing scenes and things out of the book. 5 remote viewers were blind tasked. Okay, so scientific remote viewing, and you know this is based off of the Gateway CIA Stargate project, out of which came the I believe the Gateway experience. And so any of our viewers who are interested in learning how to do remote viewing themselves, you've got the Gateway experience here on YouTube, and they use binaural beats to sync by basically putting like a pulse in your right ear, boop, 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 and then a pulse in your left ear, da 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 da. And by combining the two, you're now syncing your left and your right hemispheres of your brain, and you're able to achieve different brain states to do things like remote view,
Well, that's
astral
Hemisync
travel, whatnot.
and the Monroe Institute and all of
Yes.
that. And they've been doing that for
Interesting.
decades. And
Right.
in fact, Dick Allgaier, who's had some of the most profound projects and results of late, he's got a cord that he uses to get into a vibratory state before he does his sessions.
Mhm.
And which is nothing more than the same thing of using binaural or the Hemisync method. But there is a phenomenal piece of subtle, simple, but very sophisticated knowledge in the science of sound and the vibratory nature, light and sound. Especially if you wanted to do a show on that, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But sound, everybody has a resonance in their own frequency signature, and when you hear or feel or experience another vibration, you either have a resonance with it or you have a reaction that is in disharmony. So you're either in a harmonious or disharmony, or there's somewhere in between in a transition. But you know the ones that you really like. And this is one of my arguments for examples of time travel. All you got to do is think of a song when you grew up, and the degree of which you are actually there, you go back, is just a matter of how profound that experience was, as well as how you feel about it now. But that's instant time travel. That's non-local consciousness, because you're listening to it now, but you're experiencing something that happened a long time ago.
And then also there's like multiple experiencers have now come out of the woodwork. Captain Randy Kramer, Brad Olson, Daryl James, my direct colleague who I do a podcast with as well, Disclosure Now, Arkeem Ra, Matthew Mornian. So there's like a ton of folks. That's why we're doing this conference coming up, most likely this next July in Florida, to do our own super soldier conference about the secret space programs and whatnot.
Interesting.
Because they've done time travel. There are people they've already testified to this, and I find them credible enough, including Andrew Basiago with photographic testimony of him at Lincoln's Gettysburg Address as a child, as part of Project Pegasus.
Excuse me for a moment. Hey, Earl, I'll ask you a question here. In your research alone, do you come across subjects about like secret space program with any evidence behind it, or kind of?
I haven't really had any people that have claimed to have been part of a secret space program. I mean, I speak with plenty of experiencers. It seems to be all I do is talk with people who have had contact, but I really haven't run across anybody that believes that they were part of a secret space program. That's Corey Good, and that's kind of his.
Oh, no, I'm not
Corey Good.
I'm
It's
not
more
into,
than just
sorry,
Corey Good.
I'm not into Corey Good. No, I'm
And
sorry.
Daryl, going back to my original question, which you kind of answered, but I was interested in.
Sure.
Have you seen that increase from the 2010s to 2020, and then since then, has there been an increase in the volume or the velocity? And I think you went down the path that you're starting to. The majority of what you're seeing are encounters, right? Experiencers. What difference?
I'm seeing the whole gamut of stuff. I mean, we always kind of have.
Is there more volume now than there has been?
To a point. I mean, not exponential. I mean, it's not like it's gone up super dramatically. It's but I mean, you have to remember that it's people who have had an encounter or have seen a UFO or have had an experience, and who are looking for somewhere that they can report that.
And what percentage of those reports come with empirical data?
You mean like burn marks in the backyard from craft
Demonstrably,
landing
yeah,
and stuff like that?
things that at least
Mostly,
tangible.
I would there's
What percentage?
some. I would say I couldn't give you a percentage mark off the top of my head. Most of the cases that I wind up getting are people's testimonies. Now, these are maybe police officers. Like, for instance, I had a guy in Bakersfield who saw a black triangle hovering 30 feet away from himself over his neighbor's house. He was able to see all kinds of detail, what looked like hydraulics in the recess of this vehicle. I'll have people in the military. I have a you know, I look for commonalities in cases. I'll look for markers. Sometimes I'll have a case that I get a few years ago, and I'll see another case that pops up that seems like it's twin, but it happens like 30, 40 years apart. For instance, I had one case in Echo Park where two boys were playing toboggan with paper boxes and ice plant going down an embankment, and they see this silver missile-shaped object that's hovering about 7 feet off the ground, about the size of a railroad car. Right off, they figured out that it was a spacecraft. I guess that it looked like that. It was chromed. It was missile-shaped. The back of it was just sort of cut off. Being two 10-year-old boys, they're waving at it, and they go back to tobogganing down the hill. They go back up and they watch this thing go up to a 90-degree angle and shoot off silently. Now, I had another case come in maybe a year later where it was two gentlemen who were closer to my age. They were kind of gray in the hair at this point, both motorcycle enthusiasts up near San Diego. They were up on a mountaintop, kind of motocrossing around, and they came upon the exact same scenario. It was this missile-shaped object about the size of a railroad car. It was silver. It was chromed. This thing was hanging 7 feet off the ground. The guys got off their motorcycles. They're looking at it from where they're at. They're sort of talking with each other, just kind of amazed at what they're seeing. And again, this thing goes to a 90-degree angle and it shoots off silently into the distance. Now those two cases probably didn't have anything to do with each other, except it was pretty much the same case, 40 years apart. I see
And
stuff
how
like
far
that.
apart? Were they in the same place or somewhere? Two totally different places.
No. This was San Diego. The other one was Echo Park, which is near Hollywood. Now I'll have other people that will come in. A lot of military people will have more aggressive contact experiences. It seems to me like a lot of military people are taken up to orbit. They're sometimes shown earthly disasters, and then there's a pause, as though the entities are waiting for a reaction. One gentleman reacted badly. He wanted to strike out at the entities. He's shouting at them telepathically in his mind. He's very, very angry. And they brought him back, and he had a few more experiences, which seemed to, just speaking with this guy, it seemed to calm him over time. He had an experience where he was actually piloting a craft over another military base that's here in Southern California. Big blue spherical craft. So some people might call it an orb, but it was, like 40 feet across. I don't know if you want to call that an orb. Well, I had another guy that had the same experience. He was out in the Pacific Ocean. He was on an aircraft carrier, a Navy man. 21st birthday, he was taken up through the deck of the aircraft carrier. He could feel the decks as he passed through them. He was taken up to orbit, and he was shown something similar. He was showing the Pacific Rim volcanoes going off. There was a pause, like a pregnant pause, where they were waiting to see how he would react. This guy reacted with sadness, with empathy, thinking about the people that lost their lives below. He started praying. And he said that he felt like this great love encompassed him. He was taken back down through the decks of the aircraft carrier back to his bunk. And that was all she wrote. That was kind of the end of his experiences. The other guy, it seemed like he needed a few more to get him up to square or something, you know. So from what I see, I think there's interaction from anomalous beings that are probably trying to save us from ourselves, perhaps trying to show us how negatively we think, or how limitedly we think about things, how quickly we go to violence. My own experiences I've had, and I've had a few, not a lot, like a handful, but they all seemed like teachable moments to me. It didn't seem like it was an air show or something was being, some high tech was being shown off to me. I feel like I was being shown my motives and my heart, and the way that I, dealt with other people, and just communed with others on this planet. And it all seemed like teachable moments to me. So I see a lot of that, to me, the face-to-face contact episodes is it sort of takes the paramount configuration to me. Those are the ones that seem to jump out at me. But I think that all UFO sightings or contact episodes that people have are probably directed by this intelligence. I don't think that they're random. I don't think that they're for superficial things, showing off high tech, or just somebody randomly happened to see a UFO. Seems very programmed to me, very planned out. My personal view is that we're being tooled with, that we might survive ourselves and actually be able to become part of a space age or Star Trek future that might be there for us. I think right now, if we were freed up to do what we would normally do, we would wind up with Star Wars. And I don't think that's what our entities want. I think they are looking for Star Trek, not Star Wars.
Earl, have you, you're familiar with, what's his name? Richard Hoagland?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. He's in
So
his Mars photos and all that.
He did all the stuff with Cydonia, and he was back with CBS and all of that back at the original Apollo 11 in particular. So he has stated this, which I kind of think once I heard him say it, I went, that kind of makes sense. And it goes like this: Star Wars is our past. Star Trek is our future. And that came from this Council of Nine in particular, who Roddenberry was a member of.
In the Orion Wars, many other sources too. The Orion Wars. That's why Star Wars is based off the Orion Wars.
Yeah. What's that?
Roddenberry dug his heels into the ground and swore that he didn't really believe in all that stuff. But I think that was a smokescreen, probably.
Yeah, that was a cover, probably.
What he gave the public is too aligned with what we've seen out there. So,
and can we all just give applause and a shout out and respect to the one and only, who you would have not thought, but is the one who brought Star Trek alive and brought it to television, the one and only Lucy Ball.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't know this,
exactly, knew it. Yes,
they had pitched the pilot and the series to a dozen different, the major broadcast studios at the time, and it was Lucille Ball who said, after everybody said no, said yes, and put that out. So, shout out to Lucy. Thank you very much for stepping up and being the woman that needed to be at the time. Because she made it happen.
We need our women. They're better than us,
Can I just a question from the audience here, or a comment? Angels Our Life said that as an abductee since 2 years old, now 55, she's wanting science-based evidence. And believe her when she says she's extremely frustrated, quite angry to not have empirical evidence. You want science involved. Now, my one question for you, Angels, is many people who are reporting in these abductee experiences consciousness transfer. And so one challenge that they have and that I would offer to you as being there may be that if you're going to sleep and they're doing what's known as REM consciousness transfer, and you're having your consciousness transferred into, say, a clone or somewhere else, and then they're messing with you, how easily are you going to have empirical evidence of that? And especially if they wipe your memory to boot.
Well, it depends on it goes back to the same thing with disclosure. It depends on your definition of empirical. And every experience that you have that gets into your memory frequency stack, and that's why you can go back and you can recall them and you have them to constantly go back and look at that frequency stamp. Oh yeah, I remember that. That's the same thing with the time travel when you hear music that takes you back to whatever event, but it was in the past. The whole idea of being able to actually be aware and have that sonic experience is, I think, one of the most profound things that we're going to see in not only in learning, but in healing. And the sound frequencies and sound as a modality for medicine and for health and wellness is going to just explode, along with the botanical side, the flora side of our experience in the form of mushrooms. And those just sound, light, and mushrooms. I'm going to go out on a limb here and hang off the thin twig of speculation, but I'm going to say that those
McKenna land here.
We are talking
That's
about
cool.
magic
Like
mushroom. Magic mushrooms are we talking about here?
Oh, well, they have to be.
He's talking about psilocybin, yes.
Yeah,
Is there any other
psilocybin,
kind?
Although I like all
mescaline,
forms of mushrooms.
but regular mushrooms, the rishis, the chaga, I mean, all of that is still extremely good for your biology. But the psychoactive capabilities.
Paul Hynek, Dr. Hynek's son, is doing a series of experiments with DMT, which is naturally produced in the body. And he's been having contact experiences that way. He's been asking questions. He's been doing it very like laboratory conditions, and he's getting the answers he's getting though is you wouldn't understand if we told you. Which, are you the same guys that are flying the UFOs? The answer is you wouldn't understand our answer if we told you. But he at least has some kind of a dialogue going on there. He's come up with like a CE2 or CE1 or like the paperwork like his father came up with for Project Blue Book, except for similar questions to ask the psychonaut who is imbibed on DMT, which lasts for 5 to 10 minutes. Apparently it's a very quick when you're in that space you feel eternity, but it only takes 5-10 minutes.
The Native Americans
in my
were very much
misspent
involved,
youth. Yeah, I did. I had my brush with hallucinogenics back in the day, and I think that there's stuff that we can learn from that arena. But it's interesting that Hynek has kind of found himself in that realm. He's kind of taken his father's work to the next step, and he believes that his father would be happy about it, would be behind him. He's doing it scientifically, and there you go. Paul is one of my dearest friends. I have the greatest respect for him in the world. So more power to you, Paul. Yeah, maybe he'll figure this whole thing out on DMT for us. I don't know. He seems to think so.
What thing about DMT, Terrence?
As I was saying, the American Indians were very much involved in this. They were very much.
With DMT, Terrence, is more the South American shamans, because they were making ayahuasca or yage, because in order to make the DMT last and not to metabolize so quickly, is to only be a 5 to 10 minute blast off, if you will. Then by adding like I forget what it is. It's like a harmaline, and it stabilizes the DMT, and then that's also why it's got the purging diuretic effect, I believe, is because it lasts longer, it takes longer to break down, and that's why you have to purify yourself of certain toxins before embarking on said psychonaut journey. That one person asked a question of like, hey, have we been seeing more contact? Well, there's a contactee named Sue Walker, and she's a contactee of the PNTI, PNTI. And these are, they're not grays per se, although they look a lot like them. And they're teaching people CE5 contact techniques and telepathy, for example. One of the things they say is that in 2019, I believe it was, a Star Nations treaty ended to allow the Star Nations groups, including Sasquatch, who are related to other ETs and they're interdimensional beings. That's why they can disappear and flash in at will, unless they're sick, in which case they can kind of be stuck, and that's usually bad news for them. But there have, since 2019, the ability to see flying craft and these interdimensional beings is supposedly restrictions have been lifted, although they still apparently do have a lot of what do you call it, prime directive protocols in place so as not to mess with humanity's evolution or stop our economy that 8 billion of us kind of rely upon all at once.
Well, it seems to me that at the end of the day,
they're not going to ruin our economy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the things
I don't think they will, but it's a risk. Good. I'm sorry, Professor.
I think that people's brighter minds, hopefully, than our own, are looking at all this stuff.
Well, the only thing
disclosure is being discussed in the highest levels right now. And hopefully it's not going to be dealt with the way that the Robertson panel went down, or even as my mom discussed to me, how it will, it could ruin, major world religions and the economy, and people, they're afraid of how they're going to react and they're never going to say anything. I think that something may have changed, or maybe the attitude towards us has changed. I don't know, but I think that something's changed, and I think that we're probably going to see something that we'll be happy about, better than right now anyway. If anything, I think that war. All right. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke, what he had to say about space travel and war, he said that the only thing more interesting and more exciting to humans than war and telling war stories is the exploration of space. And I kind of agree with that. I think that there's sort of this thing within us that wants to go out there and that wants to climb that mountain. And the thing that stops that is our hatred and our small-mindedness, and how we still act like Genghis Khan and his wild brood, and I think that
Earl, I agree with you for the most part. I do think that we're going to see in the next, it's going to happen quickly, but I think it's going to be in the next 3 to 5, maybe 2 to 3. We're going to see a transformation that's going to be extremely positive. There's going to be a lot of really good stuff that's going to happen. But between now and then, and the timelines are, everybody's got a different timeline. If you, like Brian was saying earlier, if you make it 30, then congratulations. If you make it after that, then, oh, well, good luck. But I think that there's clearly a cycle of energies that are both concluding and starting. But there's there's 2 different cycles, and we're in that little space where one is fading and the other is picking up. And in that space is a bunch of chaos. And the chaos is required because that's the energy that's afoot. Now, what's happening, and this is where I'll kind of disagree with you a bit, Earl. I don't know about you, but I have adopted, and this is a long time ago, and it started building up from one institution to another. But especially over the last few years with all of this COVID crap and all of these things that have been going on, and the exposure of how inaccurate, inept, incompetent the experts have been over this period of time, I don't trust any of them. If somebody's got a 3-letter acronym tattooed on the ass end of their name, they're the first suspects. I used to give them more deference and more upfront respect and space and to their vaulted whateverness that they are supposedly extremely good at. I don't trust any of them anymore. None. I don't. In fact, I've gotten to the point to where, in particular, as it relates to the administration of the culture, and I'm talking specifically here in the U.S., the administration of our culture through this entity we call the government has all these different delineations within it. And it's like this one big hydra. Okay. That every part of that institution, every part of that administration through that institution, through its architecture, has failed. Every one of them, in fact, are most likely at least 50% or more corrupted. They're old designs. There's redundancy upon redundancy. There's shit that doesn't even need to be there. So I now look at the government in particular and in general and say, you are guilty until you prove you're innocent. Because everything that you've done to this point, in particular recently, has been a ginormous, extremely large, smelly pile of incompetence. It is just, and that's
the onus is on the scientists now too, as far as science goes.
Science is complete shit. I mean, so let me ask you this. Do you believe
I have to excuse myself for one moment. I actually have to skip to the loo here.
Go ahead.
It's been 2 hours and I'm an old man. So you guys carry on for a second. I'll be right back.
Professor, if we already know that they're hiding scientific advancements and achievements and technology from us, and that they've been killing all the naturopaths and the alternative energy people and the anti-gravity people off for the last several decades, right? I think finally they're easing up, because I think in the background they're failing in their programs. They're not getting the buy-in they thought they would and all that. And so because of that, it's like, we ask, like, is the technology going to be released? That's why some of us are pushing for the full disclosure now movement. But we don't.
I don't think any of the steps that you and I are looking forward to are going to happen with the current model in place.
Well, we don't expect it. That's why when you have a movement from the bottom up, you don't need to rely on the current model, because current model is top down. But we're going to,
from the bottom up, go up and replace all this shit, and that will be the catalyst for the reveal for the new stuff.
Has anybody ever stopped to think that back in the 50s to the early 60s, the magazines around the world, they used to have all these science magazines that talk about anti-gravity. It was such a big thing, and even it inspired the TV show, The Jensens, I know we all remember that one. But the thing is, all of a sudden, like overnight, since when TR3B was then developed, all this anti-gravity stuff in the media and magazines all stopped.
Yeah, because you have Phil Schneider and the breakaway civilizations. Yeah, the brain drain.
And if there's no secret space, I believe there is a secret space program. I do believe it. But the main reason is that makes me help to believe this. If we don't have the technology, what use is it to know if there's an exoplanet out there? If we can't communicate with it or get there, what's the purpose of it? And why do we need to spend billions on a telescope, not just one, but 2 telescopes over generations, right? Looking for life out there. And now we're not talking about SETI here with radio telescopes. Now they're looking for it. I think the main reason is that the ETs have what they call the home advantage. They know us, but we don't know where they are. Now, yes,
they're on the moon.
But besides that, what's the purpose of having these telescopes looking for exoplanets, right? when we can't even technically we haven't got the technology to get there, and they say we won't have it for the next war of 200 or 300 years.
Well, it's because they're
Yeah.
lying. I mean, that's what was
Of
my whole
course.
point. Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't believe anything that it comes from quote unquote officialdom, and it's not just the government side; it's the sciences side, it's academia, it's the medicine and health, it's all the different institutions that make up the pillars of the societies that we function in. All of them are corrupted. All of them are broke.
But what scares me
they're
about
about to get a big upgrade because they're going
Do
to
you
fall
want to
apart
bring
on
it
their
all
own.
down and
Our
go
health.
with anarchy?
But what
are
really
you guys
concerns
looking
me
for?
is
Do you want anarchy? Was better than what we have? I mean, I don't know. Anarchy doesn't sound very good to me. You know.
Well,
I mean,
let's
we're
face
used
it
to
here,
having the
El. Hey,
trains come on time and
El. Hey,
being able to go
let's look
to the
at
grocery store and things like
let's
that.
look at the reality of it all, El. You know, technology. As technology improves, we build faster and better hypersonic missiles more efficiently to kill each other.
Oh,
I mean,
all
you
of
know,
our budget goes to killing each other, which is terrible. And I think
exactly.
that's probably my feeling is that's probably the heft, probably the main issue, and probably the main that is the what the main course that is being delivered at the Thanksgiving table by our visitors. Is that we can't keep living like this, to where we consider each other our enemies, that we consider each other, that we dehumanize each other. And I'll say this, you know, I hear from a lot of people that don't necessarily like their next door neighbors in the world, who are hoping to meet gray aliens. And I'm sorry, they don't look like us. They don't act like us. They don't have the same language as us. Probably don't have the same goals and aspirations. Maybe they do. I don't know. But if we're having trouble with each other humans, you know, how are we ever going to be able to embrace somebody that's totally different than ourselves?
Well, the only thing I would like to say to that, Earl, is this. The reason, in my opinion, the reason there's all this conflict and chaos and confrontation and all of the crap in the conversation is because the majority of it is specifically put there to do just that. The narrative, the languages and the ideologies and the theologies and the scientism and the philosophies and all these different ideas of our reality have been carefully crafted and curated content that's been put in the conversation. So what's happened is a lot of it now, he's busted. A lot of it now.
What are you smoking over there? I'm doing just a regular old vape here in Southern California. Land of the Bohemian.
That's Arizona.
Well, how do you
look guilty?
How are we going to break out of that?
What's that, Earl?
So how are we to break out of this old terrible behavior? What's going to change us? What's going to be the catalyst?
Information.
That's going to change.
It's going to be information.
Good.
It's going to be all this stuff that we've been talking about. It's going to be the great reveal of
direct contact.
He actually came from these star beings in some way, shape, or form.
Contact these every single day is all I do. I retired from nursing like 4 years ago.
So that's going to change the paradigm. Our history.
I've read that book.
History.
I like Michael
Okay,
Salla.
right. So this is very, very well documented. To answer Terrence's question, why bother checking out Kepler 22b? Well, if per Gary McKinnon, his hack of Solar Warden and now Radiant Guardian apparently has already split off. This is a USS Hillenketter class type ship right there.
I've heard that.
I believe in the secret
How do you
space
know
force.
that is now? How are you to prove that isn't disinformation that was put there specifically?
I mean, in addition to Michael Salla's excellent reporting and journalism, I've got friends and colleagues. I've got friends and colleagues who are testifiers to being in these programs.
And then
there are remote viewers who, on a blind remote viewing basis, have confirmed their books and writings and their testimonies.
Also,
a blind
William
scientific
Thompson
basis.
talked
So
with a friend
I
of
guess
mine.
unless if always
Or I
people are in
practiced
on it,
anyway. Yeah. So
William
I think
Thompson.
that there is probably a secret space program. I think that I would be really disappointed if we actually had crash retrievals in 1933, which is
yeah,
recently been
Project
put
Blue
out there
Book.
by Grudge.
Now, wouldn't that be the right questions for
I mean,
Congress
yeah.
to
I mean,
be
I would be
looking
very
into?
disappointed if we hadn't figured out anything. Bob Lazar said that we hadn't. They couldn't figure out the drive. They couldn't figure out the gravity. The gravity inducers that they had. Now that was a long time ago. That was 40 years ago or a little over that. When Bob Lazar was taken to S4. Maybe we've made some leaps and bounds since then, or maybe they lied to him. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I've
I
heard
was
all
listening
this
to Bob
stuff. I mean, my
Lazar
mom
talking
worked
about
for
how it
Hughes.
works.
Yeah, my mom worked for Michael Sala and some of the other guys. They brought up Hughes aircraft. They said that they had like a portal or something.
Yeah,
I mean, if that's
Stargate.
the
They have a
truth,
jump
maybe
gate.
my mom was maybe I'm the
They have jump
prodigy of
gates
that.
because
I
when
don't
you
know.
open portals to places over and over in the same time frame, it takes more and more energy to open those portals and to keep them open. Therefore, you open up a Stargate and you hold it open. Thus, the jump gates to Mars, for example.
Yeah.
And that's been
I
reported
love
by
all that stuff.
many people.
I haven't seen any proof that we've got that. I hope we do. I would be that I love that stuff, and I have read Michael's books. I like them, and I hope that some of that stuff is true. If not all of it, that would be great news.
Well, the one thing that
you guys.
Jim
How do they say it? My pay grade isn't that high. I don't
yeah.
really have one.
So one of the things that Jim has said,
Yeah.
about his relationship with Rich, and in particular, what Ben is famous for about being able to take
Yeah.
ET home. The thing that I would wish I could get into, and I'm sure you would too, Jim, if we could find the answer to this, but is when he said this, we went there and we did all that stuff and it wasn't worth it. I'd like to know what parts weren't, like, the warp drive, the teleportation, the whole concept of what they had as far as technology is either he had to say that because they found something better, but to say that I don't think the teleportation or whatever the decisions were is not worth pursuing. That it would be a fascinating exploration.
I mean, his exact words, been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort.
So I wonder what the weren't worth the effort ones were. Boy, say that 5 times. What worth the
Maybe
so
maybe it was time. Maybe it was
I take
time
Rich
travel.
really. I take them at face value. I mean, I think my mom used to send people out to them. I mean, my mom was a headhunter for the for the military industrial complex is what my mom did. She started with Hughes back in the 1950s. She worked in an underground facility, and she tried to retire when I was born, and she missed the excitement, so she went back into it back in the 70s. She used Manpower like an employment agency as her cover, but all she was doing was getting scientists out to Rockwell, to Lockheed, to Raytheon, to Northrop, to TRW. I mean, that kind of struck me when I heard Grush's interview on Joe Rogan the other day was that it was like the litany of the companies my mom sent people out to. In fact, she sent people that I knew. There was like this one guy. It was a self-taught polymath genius that was the biggest nerd you'd ever met. But my mom sent him to a complex somewhere. He was gone for 3 months, and his mother, who was my old math teacher who flunked me, was calling me up on the phone and going, "Where did your mom send my son? I haven't gotten a phone call. I haven't gotten anything." He came back 3 months later with a wad of cash, a hot car, and a fake story about him joining a monastery. He was a Mormon. Mormons don't join monasteries. But, this guy was able to look at a sheet of numbers and he could point the one that was out of place. I know he saved Northrop's mainframe that way back around 1974. She sent him out there first as his first job. And he pulled out an old computer readout sheet. He had one number circled in an orange grease pen. So he said that brought Northrop down to their knees for a month. So, I mean, I know we've been dabbling in this stuff for years and years. I know my mom had a hand in it. I don't know how much she knew, although I know that she worked in an underground facility. I know that she knew that we weren't alone. She told me when I was 5, that started my problems,
So wait a minute. Did that include the reality of Santa at 5? I mean, if we weren't alone, Santa,
they didn't let me believe in Santa. My dad wouldn't let me believe in Santa. He said, if I tell you Santa is real, then you'll think everything else I tell you is a lie. No, you didn't. My dad didn't let me believe in Santa. And Mom didn't care about Santa. She cared about UFOs, Howard Hughes, Werner von Braun, who was, somebody she worked with apparently. And, once in a while something would come out of her mouth where she would say, "Oh, that's my old friend Werner, who called me Betty Grace," or she would, I would take her to see the movie E.T. thinking she would talk more. She talked after Star Wars. She talked a lot, maybe more than I wanted to hear. And I took her to see E.T. and what she said was, "I don't think they're that nice, son. It's a cute movie. I don't think they're that nice." That was her comment with that, So this is what kind of led me out there. I have to take
and that's
everything with a
probably
grain of
why.
salt.
And that's probably
My
why
nature.
Ben Rich said it wasn't worth it. It was like opening up a Pandora's box.
In ET,
I don't
that's a
know.
very specific reference, though, to Project Serpo. Okay, in Project Serpo, those were benevolent aliens. That was a trade-off where our humans got to go there for like 8 years to their home planet where it's really hot, and they got to ending up at the poles where it was cooler. Right,
Richard
but that's
Doty
benevolent.
Project Serpo to
Yeah.
you guys.
And
The
others.
same guy that
I mean,
went made Paul Benowitz go insane.
Yeah, and I know
But
Doty was
it
also
might be
misinformation agent, but it was more than just
Yeah.
he wasn't the only source of the Serpo
That's
transcript, so I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, he knows some stuff. I mean, this is okay. Greg Bishop, my best buddy out here, Greg Bishop, thinks outside of the box all the time. Doesn't take anything face value. Nothing. Loves Jock Valet like I do. Greg Bishop said that Richard Doty, like 80 to 90% of what comes out of his mouth is bullshit. So my job is to figure out what 10% that comes out of his mouth isn't bullshit. If you don't play the game, you don't get nothing. And that's Greg. And I have a hell of a lot of respect for Greg, probably more than any other researcher I know, actually. I try to temper my own.
Hey, on a personal note, Earl, do you think he did walk around with an attaché case full of dollars?
Richard Doty?
Yeah,
Doty.
Yeah.
I think that Doty probably had access to all kinds of programs. I think that he did work at S4, and he probably did. He probably was asked to guard a flying saucer that was hovering behind him.
Yeah, but wasn't he
a
also
lot of this goes along with Bob Lazar's story.
Yeah, but wasn't he also responsible to going to the media and paying off the executives to keep things under hush? I mean, like to ignore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To do with your.
He's like a CIA agent. Yeah, sure.
He intentionally disinformed Paul Benowitz and helped make him go insane. And actually,
and then he's dead now.
Dr. Hynek played part of that too. I mean, Hynek was part. I mean, he was working for the Air Force, So, but I think that you should listen to Doty, but you should question Doty. I do. I mean, everything that comes out of Doty's mouth, I listen to, and I think it's interesting. I put it on my shelf, but I don't call it
Well, I look at it
God's
this way:
gospel.
anyone that's on Gaia Industries, doing documentaries, I question everything Gaia does.
Yeah. And you mentioned Werner von Braun earlier and Howard Hughes, and those two are instrumental in setting up the initial secret space programs with the U.S. Navy. And this is per Dr. Sala's research.
Probably.
I have to go, gentlemen. Just want to wish you all and our audience thank you for having me, and an excellent evening to all of you.
It was good meeting you, Brian. I hope I didn't come down too hard on you. I'm sorry about that. I
Politics,
it's okay.
I've been careful with political stuff.
I've been through it my whole life. It's okay. Nothing new.
Politics stays right out of it here. That's for sure.
Brian, good to see you again.
And everything.
It was good seeing you again.
Thank you, everybody. All right. Cheers, Jim. Cheers, Terrence. Cheers, Earl.
Pleasure,
cheers,
buddy.
Professor.
Bye-bye
Cheers,
now.
audience.
Oh, yeah.
If I talk politics, I'll lose half of my Move Fun team. It would be a revolt, I swear half of them are, this way and half vote the other way, and it's just like I have to go.
Religion and politics stays out of this. That's all I say. Don't. Hey, everybody has their own beliefs. They're entitled to it. Yeah.
I can show you a picture of my group, and everybody has their hands in the air, and it looks like I've been told it looks like a Pentecostal meeting because everybody's so happy. I know.
Hey, by the way, Robert,
it would be the opposite if I got political.
He's an avid a musician. He's a musician. He's a musician.
I know. I noticed your guitars.
What do you? Are you a musician as well, Earl?
I'm another guitar slinger.
All right.
You'll have to sling him some of your dates there.
Writer, producer.
Hey,
nowadays I get gigs for background vocals. My wife and I, we found a.
I said I can't understand anything. I have monaural hearing. When three people are talking, you can't. If someone's talking, let them finish talking.
Yes. What I do, whoever has the screen talks, and when we change screen, finish your sentence, and then let the other person talk.
Yeah.
Hey, let the screen do it.
And you're gonna
what
manage
I was
that?
Say,
yes,
if
I'll
I
manage
can.
that. Okay.
My wife and I have found later in life our gig that we keep getting now is people want us to sing background vocals on their CDs. So, we got another gig everybody wants background vocals, but we do that. And now that seems to be all we're doing, but it's fun, you got to be the Beach Boys. We'll go in there and we'll put down 40 tracks of vocals and give you Pet Sounds kind of stuff, whatever you want. We'll do the gospel choir, or we'll do the whatever, Rubber Soul Beatles. So that's I find myself doing a lot of that nowadays, which is fun. At least I'm working still.
Well, would love to get together separately out of here and talk about some music, about some audio. I want to share some of my stuff that I've done. I do VO work as well, but mostly I'm in the content creation mode right now. So, yeah, it's
cool.
It's fun, especially when you have some toys and you got a skill or two here or there that you can go play with that stuff. Do you have a website?
Not really. Not for my music stuff. You just look up Earl Grey Anderson, or look up Piper Gray was my old acoustic duo. We were really good, but UFOs, aliens kind of invaded my life. Now I find it hard to find time to pick up my guitar, which is crazy. That's all I focused on for 40 years of my life. And now it seems to be all aliens and this stuff, So I love it, I guess I asked for it. Yeah.
It must be.
Well, it is the flavor du jour, right? We've got, what are we doing? We're sitting here talking about it.
And it's, come on, Jim, speak up, buddy. Speak up.
Yeah, I'm awake.
Your turn, Jim. Tell us more about Bob
Jim.
Lazar. I want to hear about Bob. I don't know him.
I do, and
Cool. Introduce
Boom.
us too.
he is as far as I'm concerned, he is who he says he is. And if the Department of Navy that was paying him, the reaction I got from a 2-star admiral was priceless. I was activated for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. I had a fatal attraction girlfriend I was trying to get her away from. And I volunteered to go to Saudi Arabia for a year. That's how much I wanted just to, didn't want her to follow me. Yeah, and oh shit, I just lost track where I was going. Oh, I hate that.
Bob Lazar, Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah. I had his W-2 in my back pocket. At the time, I was an E6 tech sergeant. I'm a historian. I'm an Air Force historian. That's why I'm there. I'm documenting the Army and Air Guard involvement in Desert Storm, up to including anything that Schwarzkopf saw. I read. I had to read absolutely every single message to him from CENTCOM. And one particular day, it was just a down day. I don't think anybody was blowing anybody up and whatever. So, I was on the Pentagon computer, and I'm looking for this Department of Navy, and I can't recall exactly what it said. But I was trying to find this department, and it was nowhere to be found. So I think, I believe it was something like Naval Investigative Services. So I wander over. It's one of the outer rings, and the door was open. And I went in. There was a young Lieutenant JG. Everywhere else, it'd be a first lieutenant. And I said, "Sir, can you tell me where this place is located? Where this Department of the Navy is located?" He looks at it, looks at me. "Excuse me, Sergeant." Gets up, goes into the 2-star's office. He's in there 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. He comes wandering out and he said, "The Admiral will see you now." Now, those that know how the Navy operates, a 2-star Navy admiral is not going to talk to an Air Force / Air National Guard enlisted puke unless he had no choice. So I went in there, and I was haircut was good. I had my hair was a little bit darker back then. Actually, that was 30 years ago. And
Me too.
amazing. I go in there and I give him a sharp salute. And rather than saying at ease, he said, "Parade rest." So I'm standing there, and he's holding Lazar's W-2. He said, "Sergeant, I don't know where you got this from, but if I ever see your face cross the threshold of my office ever again, you'll be the most sorriest son of a bitch NCO in the United States military. Do you understand me, Sergeant?" I said, "Yes, sir." And with that, he put the W-2 into the shredder and said, "You're dismissed." I gave him a sharp salute. I did a about face. And I went, "Oh, shit."
I believe I believe that. I believe it. I asked my mom about Bob Lazar, okay, because what I heard about him, it reminded me of the people my mom got out to these other companies. You look for talent, right? Sometimes undocumented talent. So I just went and I just asked my mom, "So, Mom, have you ever heard of this guy, Bob Lazar?" And she got real uncomfortable looking. And I think it's the only UFO person's name I ever presented to her. I wasn't into the UFO thing back then. I wanted to get information from my mom, but anyway, I brought up Bob Lazar and she said, "Bob Laser, that's not a real name." And then she just went to change the subject, and she put her glasses back up, and that was all she wrote, all she said. I've always had the feeling, well, maybe she got him out to a job or something. It seemed like her kind of guy, you know. Thank you. I love that story. I think he offended a lot of people. Stanton Friedman, for one. Stanton didn't like him. He said he didn't seem like a doctor to him. You know, it's like, well, I've known some pretty wild doctors. So,
I mean, my dad went to Caltech, you know, IQ 175 plus. He looked like a refugee. I mean, when he was going in for his master's, I mean, he's a triple major: mathematics, physics, electrical engineering. Neil wanted to come to, when I saw that stealth bomber being tested. You know, I'd flown the B-2 simulator. That was fun. I wanted to drop a nuke, and they wouldn't let me. And he said, "Where?" And I said, 1600. He said, "No, stop! You can't. Everything is taped in this, you know, in the sim." And I was 2 hours. Actually, I was 2.5 hours flying the B-2 simulator. I'm trying to think.
Very cool.
I was the first guy.
I saw the SR-71 land once. I got to see it land, the SR-71, over at the Edwards. I got invited to open house, not because of my prowess in the sciences, but because my son had a real connected grammar school teacher that got us into the open house. We were in the bleachers, and they had decommissioned the SR-71. And you could hear the whine of it coming over the mountains. It was a very distinct sound. And that sucker landed right in front of the bleachers. So we got to see the shuttle land, and we got to watch Chuck Yeager break the sound barrier. He was one of the wingmen for the shuttle that day. It was at Atlantis, I think. But I'll tell you, the prize of the day was seeing that beautiful Buck Rogers plane from 1961 land on that on that beautiful runway there at Edwards.
I was an 18-year-old airman second class. I was TDY from Lowry Air Force Base in Denver to Edwards Air Force Base, and I got there on last week of February 1964. I was assigned to Edwards. I was there to support 3 programs: the YC-141 Lockheed Starlifter, the XB-70 Valkyrie from North American Aviation, and a classified program. And the morning of February 29th, something landed. 2 airplanes landed at Edwards, and they had backed them where they were going to back into the hangars. The engines were still running, and it set off the deluge system, almost drowned the Lockheed guys.
Oh my God.
My building is 8 miles from the flight line. I go running out I have a flight line badge. I wanted to see what the hell happened. And because the sirens went off, and it was something else. And the vehicle's gone. So, oh, damn. So fast forward, it's, I could hear it. I didn't know what the hell it was. And I had worked a lot of overtime, and you don't get paid overtime. You get comp time for overtime. So I was going to take the Northrop shuttle. It was a Piaggio. It was a gull wing pusher. And that's how they went between Edwards Air Force Base and Hawthorne, California, where the headquarters of Northrop was. And I'm waiting there at the Northrop ramp, hear this incredible sound, and I see debris being blown all across Rogers Dry Lake. And I went running down to see what it was. And at first I thought it was the X-15, but the people were too small. And and the fire coming out the back. I mean, I'm just sitting there. I mean, I joined the Air Force. I wanted to see airplanes. That is an airplane, and it's affected me the rest of my life. And hey, we're loading. So I go running back. I jump in there when we take off right over Rogers Dry Lake, and we bank over, and I'm looking straight down the top of a YF-12.
Wow.
Holy shit, it's Buck Rogers. And they were
That is
towing
Buck Rogers.
They were towing a
It is Buck
C-130
Rogers.
in front of it. They had just shut it down, so I knew how big a C-130 was. This is a two-man interceptor. It was, it was like 105 feet long. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, it was Buck Rogers. This is March 10th, 1964. And,
Can you believe that? It's such a beautiful, gorgeous, I mean, it's Kelly Johnson's baby, it's beautiful, beautiful.
And then,
beautiful rocket jet.
I got back from my extended time off. Monday morning, first thing, I get a set of work orders, Lockheed hangar, and I walk into the Lockheed hangar, and I'm looking at the ass end of 2 Blackbirds. This is,
The only thing better than one, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Terry is playing us out. It sounds like Saturday Night Live.
That's right. We've been at it now for, 2 hours and 40 minutes we've been at it. And do you realize when I have a show on, I can't get a friggin' word in edgewise.
I'm sorry.
Hey,
have me back sometime. I enjoyed your crew. This was fun, you guys.
I must apologize for the politics that came out. I had no.
That's okay. I'm not.
Hey,
I'm no.
Love to have you on again. Hey, become part of the family. Everybody else has. but listen, I want to say thank you to all you guys.
The QAnon stuff, but that's
all right,
guys.
A couple of my favorite people.
Let's do this again.
Earl, I really enjoyed it. I sent you a message to try to connect. I'd like to share some music.
Listen, why don't you guys all you guys stay in the studio? I'll close down the streaming. You guys just stay there and keep yatting to yourselves while I just put on.
I'm going to go head on out.
I'm going to go finish my soup.
Yeah, I'm going to go too.
I know Earl would have loved to talk to you. Okay. Anyway, guys.
And they're glowing.
Thank you very much.
All right,
you guys. I do really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Take care, everyone.
Anyway, all I can say is now, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
I want to talk with you for like a month, dude. Yeah, I love your Lockheed stories, dude.
Oh, cool.
Well, he can do that.
All right,
he can do that.
I know. No, he can. I know. I've got his words, I've heard. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Bye, you guys.
All right. Take care.
Nice meeting you, mate. Okay. I'm going to sign out here and thank everybody for joining us. Don't forget, be nice. Be nice. Be kind. Aspire to inspire one another. And if you're going to get into trouble, don't get caught. That's rule number 1. Anyway, I'm just going to give a little something here just to close the show down. A little bit of a thing. Even Jim's in this one.
It's a mind-blowing situation. For the public, it's like, a conspiracy theory, it's entertaining. But if you're actually in a responsible position and you find out that there's a whole secret government program that you don't know about, it's a shock.
This report comes from a shadowy Pentagon department that was shut down in 2012.
The disclosure movement has been hijacked by people parroting the narrative and the script being written by these black projects. I would say 90+% of everything that's going to come out is false.
The most widely seen UFO right now is not alien, it's actually ours.
It's a great cover story for all kinds of criminal activities. Blame it on the aliens, right?
If we are being visited by interdimensional beings, we should know about it.
This has the big disadvantage of the truth being much more unbelievable than the fiction.
It's the crash retrievals that are the Rosetta Stone for solving the UFO cover-up.
The implications of this is the difference between extinction level civilization
versus one that's going to take off to the stars.
How